Hey, Tevin, when you're ready, you can proceed.
A pleasant good morning, all. Welcome to Mtcc Caribbean's virtual conference and exhibition, or the long name, our Caribbean Maritime Climate Action Conference and Exhibition. Now, this exhibition will center around energy efficiency in the maritime industry, and there are a few ground rules that I'd like to go over with you before we begin. So most importantly, as you all would know from all of the online events that we would have been participating in over the past year, please remain muted whenever you are not speaking. If you have a question that you would like to ask, please use the Zoom chat to raise your hand, or you are free to put the question in the chat and the moderator will ask the question for you or will direct you to ask the question. We ask that wherever possible, participants remain with their videos on, preferably at all times. This makes it easier for the presenters and for the participants to feel included and to better interact with you. I think those are our ground rules for now. And at this time, I would like to pass on to our director, Mrs. Vivian Rambert Parasram.
Thank you, Tevin. Good morning to everyone and welcome to Mtcc Caribbean's Maritime Climate Action Conference. It's a conference that is essentially focusing on energy efficiency, and we are also hosting a virtual exhibit. So as we start this morning's proceedings, I would like now to acknowledge some key persons that are joining with us this morning. Professor Marlon Knights, our Assistant Vice President for Research on Impact and Postgraduate Studies at UTT. Dr. Joyce Mathikel, Chief Department Partnerships and Projects at the IMO. Mrs. Sanyan Soldatich, Charge d'Affaires for the delegation of the European Union to Trinidad and Tobago. Captain Sukhjit Singh, our program leader for Maritime Studies at the Center for Maritime and Ocean Studies at UTT. Mr. Anton Rhodes and our heads joining us from Mtcc Africa, Lydia and Wiran from Mtcc Asia. Colleagues, representatives from maritime administrations in the Caribbean region. Good morning, good afternoon, and special good evening to our colleagues from China who are joining us in the after-work hours. That's essentially testimony that the Gmn is never asleep. We at Mtcc Caribbean, we are very pleased to welcome you to our conference and exhibition, albeit in the virtual sphere. We are indeed very privileged to have over 100 conference participants, and this is truly remarkable, given that some of our key stakeholders might actually be Mtcc event weary by the end of February. With the continuing pandemic, we were obliged to compress our capacity building initiatives, which required your active participation in back-to-back events. It would have been a wonderful experience to host all our participants in person, but notwithstanding this, your ongoing participation is indeed reflective of your commitment to progressing the maritime climate agenda. In my presentation later this morning, I will update you on the work of Mtcc and our future possibilities, while Captain Singh will update you on the technical areas that we may wish to collectively focus on as we move forward in climate mitigation. This online conference spans 3 days, covering updates on the work of the Gmn network, contemporary issues affecting climate action in the maritime sector, and we will also delve into technical considerations for decarbonizing this industry. Perspectives from industry, academia, and government will also be shared. A virtual exhibition hall showcasing technology, alternative fuel suppliers, as well as knowledge providers will be available for the duration of the conference and maintained as a conference website following the end of this event. As we continue to progress the development of the maritime sector, we must also be cognizant of the blue economy paradigm that has emerged as a central focus for the sustainable development of small island developing states and other large water marine economies. Some Caribbean states have successfully developed policy and institutional frameworks to facilitate the development of their blue economies. However, much of those interventions have focused on the management of living marine resources and their associated livelihoods, with little attention to the opportunities and threats facing maritime transport and logistics, one of the noted and considerable contributors of the blue economy. As the maritime industry continues to navigate into a decarbonized future, its role and impact on blue growth initiatives need to be considered and integrated into relevant policy interventions for the long-term success of the blue economy. Ports are also expected to be significant actors in facilitating blue growth and climate action. They therefore need to adopt to new and emerging technologies in shipping to ensure that they are capable of supporting the carbon neutral ambitions of the shipping lines that they host. In our previous capacity building activities, the benefits of just-in-time shipping, maritime informatics, and port collaborative decision-making would have been discussed with a view to stimulating adoption of these mechanisms across the Caribbean region. The climate agenda must also encompass issues of gender parity. I wish to draw your attention to the particular challenges the pandemic has brought to progressing gender parity in all aspects of life. Secretary General Antonio Guterres has sounded the alarm that the pandemic has reversed the limited but important progress in addressing gender equality. He has also called for women's leadership and contributions to be at the heart of coronavirus resilience and recovery efforts. While the business case for women's inclusion has been scientifically proven and even legislated upon for publicly traded companies in some countries, effective inclusion will not be possible if our sisters are not safe from violence and abuse. I wish to request that all participants lend their voices to openly condemning and calling out gender discrimination and violence towards women. These are not cries that should be limited to specific forums. They need to dominate every forum if we are to truly harness the untapped resource potential that women represent. Climate action is just a bandage to a greater existential threat if half of humanity is systemically marginalized. This context culminates the work of Mtcc Caribbean for this phase of the GMN. We encourage your active participation and candid feedback on sessions as we progress the agenda for decarbonizing maritime shipping. So having said that mouthful, I now have the privilege of welcoming Professor Knights, the Assistant Vice President for Research and Impact for Postgraduate Studies at UTT. Professor Knights oversees, given his portfolio, the MTCC's involvement within the university. And in addition to being our AVP for Research and Impact, he's also our Program Professor for Bioscience, Agriculture, and Technology. So I would like to welcome Professor Knights this morning.
Okay, thank you very much. It's great to be here and at another of your wonderful conferences. Let me begin by welcoming Dr. Jose Matical, Chief Department of Partnerships and Projects, the IMO, Mr. Sanjin Soldatich, Charge the Affairs Delegation of the European Union to Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Anton Rhodes, Project Manager, GMN Project Coordination Unit, IMO, Mrs. Vivian Rambarat Parasram, our own Director of the MTCC Caribbean, Captain Sujit Singh, our co-director or deputy director, and our program lead for maritime studies at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. I looked through your guest list and your presentation list, and I know there are a number of other distinguished panelists, which I wouldn't name, but to you and all invited guests, thank you and good morning. Thank you for inviting me today to bring greetings on behalf of the University of Trinidad and Tobago. The university is indeed appreciative and privileged to have the continued assistance of the IMO and the associated partners. This association would no longer support our efforts towards supporting climate change action in the region. The Mtcc Caribbean, based at our University of Trinidad and Tobago, continues to play a major role in this effort. Their research is and would be useful in informing policy and decisions nationally and regionally. The Mtcc also continues to increase awareness, build capacity, and support efforts to preserve and conserve our environment. And of course, with energy efficiency remaining a top priority. Research has shown that maritime shipping is a key sector in the global economy, accounting for 90% of global economic trade. In Latin America and the Caribbean, maritime transport is responsible for over 90% of all international freight volume and is thus the most important facilitator of the region's participation in the global market. Despite being an environmentally friendly mode of transport, the progressive increase in seaborne trade also implies high emissions and greater energy consumption. Forecasts point to an increase in emissions of up to 250% by 2050. Further, energy costs accounts for between 60 and 70% of the overall operating cost of vessels. Thus, the need arises to ensure more efficient and environmentally friendly maritime activity. This positions the promotion of energy efficiency as one of the main objectives in services such as transport. Investing in energy efficiency measures will help to manage and reduce energy consumption and harmful emissions. Therefore, it is a highly relevant issue that becomes a key point for the business and political decisions driven by the critical need for environmental protection and greater energy savings. Improved knowledge in this field could help all stakeholders to act in a more sustainable and efficient manner. As part of the National Development Strategy of Trinidad and Tobago, Vision 2030, the top 3 long-term goals under theme 5, that is, this theme is placing the environment at the center of social and economic development. So the 3 long-term goals under this theme includes a healthier environment, improved energy efficiency, and improved climate resilience. I dare say those 3 long-term goals are, in fact, clearly the objectives of the Mtcc and the IMO. And so I thank you as a citizen and also as the university for taking on what we as a nation also consider very critical goals. As the national university, UTT is mandated to support national and international development goals. Mtcc Caribbean, under the dedicated leadership of its director and deputy director, has ensured we achieve our mandate as it relates to the maritime sector. In addition to our efforts through Mtcc Caribbean, the university has also introduced a number of courses and programs in renewable energy. And we continue to conduct research and provide services in the general area of energy efficiency. For example, our most recent collaboration with the UNDP has seen our participation in the Global Climate Change Alliance Plus Trinidad and Tobago project. As such, UTT remains committed to play our role in climate action. Through relevant and targeted capacity building initiatives, through strengthening of our collaborative research efforts, we will continue to contribute to the decarbonizing of the maritime and other sectors of the economy. Therefore, you will agree with me that although we may be a small institution, our efforts in support of these national and international development goals can have a major and long-lasting impact on our entire region. As the host institute for Mtcc Caribbean, UTT values our continued partnership with the IMO as we extend our efforts in support of development of energy efficiency in the maritime sector that would result in reduced emissions, implementation of effective fuel efficiency measures, and a safer and cleaner environment for the people of the Caribbean region. I wish you all a productive, informative, and rewarding conference, and thank you again. Vivian?
Thank you, Prof. Thank you for those very kind words on the Mtcc and indeed highlighting the impact of the Mtcc within the university, within the domestic framework, and the international and regional frameworks. Truly appreciated. I now have the distinct honor of now calling on Dr. Joe Mathikel, who is our Chief of the Department of Partnerships and Projects at the International Maritime Organization. Joe spearheads efforts to enhance partnerships and resource mobilization efforts in promoting innovation, and he also is instrumental in increasing the portfolio of major technical operation projects in support of IMO's role in safety and security of shipping. Joe has been instrumental in some of the major projects in terms of climate action and marine environmental protection. Some of these include the GMN, the Glow Ballast, the Glow Beep, the Glow Fouling, the Green Voyage, Glow Litter, and there are so many others. But those are the highlights. So I now ask that Joe, please.
Thank you, Vivian. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Professor Knight's Assistant Vice President for Research Impact and Postgraduate Studies of UTT, Mr. Soldatic, delegation from of the European Union to Trinidad and Tobago, Ms. Vivian, Director and Head of Mtcc Caribbean, Andon Rhodes, our Gmn Project Manager from IMO, Ms. Lydia Ghg, Head of Mtcc Africa, Professor Wei Ruan, Head of Mtcc Asia, representatives of the maritime administrations in the Caribbean region, distinguished speakers and all the virtual exhibitors at the conference, delegates and participants of this conference, colleagues and friends. A very good morning and a good afternoon and good evening, depending on where you're participating from today. I bring the greetings of the IMO Secretary General, Mr. Kitak Lim, to all of you. It's a great privilege and honor for me to be saying a few words on behalf of IMO. Also, personally, a very proud moment for me, seeing a dream coming into fruition, a dream we collectively dreamed with the EU, a vision we collectively chased with MTCCs and the countries to develop a global network of maritime technology cooperation centers that can become the regional centers of excellence in the respective regions. A network that can help catalyze the transition of the maritime sector in these regions towards low or zero carbon mode of transport and contribute to the global efforts to address climate change. As you all know, combating climate change is one of IMO's main priorities. We are continually exploring opportunities to make shipping more environmentally friendly and energy efficient. As you may be already aware, the 75th session of MEPC, which was held in November 2020, which is one of the committee meetings of IMO, approved the draft new mandatory regulations to cut the carbon intensity of existing ships. The draft amendments to this MARPOL convention would require ships to combine a technical and an operational approach to reduce their carbon intensity. This is very much in line with the ambition of the initial IMO Ghg strategy. Now, one of the IMO initiatives around energy efficiency and climate change is this project, which is the Global MTCC Network Project, short as GMN. a major initiative funded by the European Union and implemented by the International IMO. I still remember the day when one of our EU representatives walked into my office and said, we need to do something together. And this was back in 2015. And I'm very happy to see where we are today. From that day onwards, the journey has been exciting together with the EU and all the MTCCs. The Gmn core goal is reducing GHG emissions from the maritime sector and advancing the IMO's GHG reduction strategy. As I said, it all began in 2016 when IMO and EU joined the hands as we shared a common vision of reducing carbon footprint in the maritime sector. And to meet this objective, the idea was to establish this maritime technology cooperation centers in the different regions, and one in Africa, one in Asia, one in the Caribbean, one in the Pacific, and there was one in Latin America as well. And the idea was to have this network so they can communicate each other, share the lessons, and have a collective global efforts to address this issue. Since the centers became operational in 2017, these centers have developed a strong network, as we anticipated, across these regions. And through their pilot projects and the capacity building, they have also built a strong technical expertise. And they are now very well established and perfectly positioned to support these regions as centers of excellence. Thanks to this great work of MTCCs, the role of the GMN and the MTCCs to support IMO's work is very much captured in the IMO Ghg strategy, the framework strategy that we are working on. So MTCCs have a central role or a key role in supporting the strategy. Of course, in addition to the GMN project, there are numerous other initiatives IMO is undertaking, namely the Green Voyage 2050, another project, the Next Gen initiative, which connects the various initiatives around the world on climate change, the GHG Smart Training Program, which will be focusing on the SITs and the LDCs, the Maritime Zero and Low Emission Innovation Forum that will happen in September. Please keep an eye on that. The FinSmart Roundtable, which is a roundtable of all the financial institutions, including the World Bank and the EBRD and others, to discuss and address financial challenges when dealing with climate change issues and maritime sector. So these are all the initiatives going on in addition to the GMN, but GMN still plays an important role in the regions to take this agenda further. So coming to Caribbean, of course, the seas are of vital importance for domestic and international shipping. They connect the main islands and are the lifeblood of the trade and the Caribbean economy. Therefore, it is vital that the shipping sector is managed in such a way to ensure the long-term sustainability and the protection of the environment. From the collaborative work that is being led by MTCCs, it is clear that the colleagues across the Caribbean are progressing the agenda for decarbonization shipping. It was really encouraging to see that the MTCC Caribbean has established various regional, sub-regional focal points, and the communication across the countries in the Caribbean has been very impressive. The past year was unprecedented in many respects, as it posed significant challenges in organization of activities, as you can imagine. However, despite these challenges, we saw incredible partnerships and efforts in being able to find alternative means to provide platforms in which ideas, knowledge, insights, and experience could be shared to discuss these issues that we are facing the world is facing today. Through these initiatives, we facilitate important dialogue on how the maritime field can also tackle climate change and reduce the carbon emissions. And this conference is a classic example of such an approach to share this information. And this conference is yet another excellent opportunity for us to share and gain knowledge about combating climate change and reducing air pollution in the maritime sector. The event, as I understand, is packed with insightful and thought-provoking presentations, and I look forward to it, as well as virtual exhibition to showcase energy-efficient technology and alternative fuel providers, among others. Ladies and gentlemen, the world relies on shipping for world trade, and shipping needs to be sustainable. At IMO, we are committed to engaging with all the stakeholders to play our part in protecting the planet while fostering sustainable economic activity. This event is a great example of collaboration and cooperation involving many different entities who are working to bring solutions to improve energy efficiency in the maritime sector, and thereby help to reduce the GHG emissions and mitigate climate change. I congratulate you all for these achievements that you have achieved in the Caribbean region and across the world through this MTCC network. Let me take this opportunity to conclude and thank all involved for bringing everyone together through this conference, a bit virtually, and particularly the EU for funding the Gmn project, and also to UTT for hosting this event through the MTCC Caribbean. I would like to thank the main organizers, the MTCC Caribbean, the PCU, the Project Coordination Unit of IMO, all the speakers and the participants, and wish you all the very best and a very productive discussions in the next few days in this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jose. That was truly wonderful to hear the work that the IMO is doing. We are so very grateful for the continued support of the IMO, your active involvement. You know, we always see that energy coming from you in terms of how we are going to progress and how we're going to continue the Gmn. So we are truly encouraged that you're able to share also the further developments that are happening in the IMO with respect to the Gmn and how the Gmn complements that. So thank you for those kind words and remarks on behalf of the Secretary General. I now wish to ask Mr. Sanyin Soldatich of the European Union, the Charge d'Affaires of the European Union to Trinidad and Tobago, to bring greetings on behalf of the EU. Mr. Soldatich is a career diplomat, and he's held various portfolios within the EU and within the Croatian embassy to the Russian Federation. And he's also he took over the position in 2019 of head of the unit of communications and cultural activities of the Croatian presidency for the Council of the EU. So Mr. Sanjin is also has a Master of Arts in Journalism, Political Science, and a Master of Arts in International Relations and Diplomacy. I welcome Mr. Sanyin Soldatich.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You hear me, right?
We hear you.
Hello. Okay. Thank you very much once again, Mrs. Vivian Rambarat Parasram. I extend my greetings as well to Professor Marlon Knights, to Dr. Jose Matikel, and to every participant of today's conference, not only 2 days, but 3 days conference. It is with great pleasure that I greet you on behalf of the European Union. I wish we could have met in live, but I hope better days are in front of us. It is important and timely to acknowledge the work of the Maritime Technology Cooperation Center, Mtcc Caribbean, in addressing the challenges and opportunities in climate action within the maritime sector and its continued effort in building regional capacity for the implementation of the MARPOL Convention and the decarbonization of maritime operations. We from the EU are particularly happy to see that one of our EU-funded programs, Capacity Building for Climate Mitigation in the Maritime Shipping Industry, implemented by the International Maritime Organization, had a significant role in a successful partnership with the global MTCC network. The project aims at reducing greenhouse gas and other emissions, as well as promoting energy efficiency in the maritime shipping industry. Global efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from shipping rely heavily on improvements in energy efficiency and increased use of low carbon technologies. Better energy efficiency means less fuel is used, that leads to lower emissions, and finally results in cleaner planet Earth. Funded by the European Union and implemented by the International Maritime Organization, the global Mtcc network initiative unites technology centers in targeted regions in Asia, in Africa, in the Caribbean, Latin America, and Pacific into a global network. Together, they are promoting technologies and operations to improve energy efficiency in the maritime sector and help navigate shipping into a low-carbon future. Carefully selected to become centers of excellence for their regions, the Mtccs focus on technical cooperation, capacity building, and technology transfer. The Mtccs are partnering with forward-thinking academic institutions, such as the University of Trinidad and Tobago, commercial and shipping companies, government departments and authorities, as well as other UN bodies with a climate change mandate to pursue these far-reaching objectives. Ladies and gentlemen, I will deviate a little from the topic of the conference today, but it is important and of course interrelates with what will be discussed in the next 3 days. I would like to acquaint you briefly with the European Green Deal. It is a radical project to make the EU climate neutral by 2050. That means the world's second largest economy will stop adding to the Earth's stock of greenhouse gases by then. It covers every aspect of society and the economy and includes goals for biodiversity and agriculture. The European Union is deeply committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and has reaffirmed that developed countries as a group should continue to take the lead and should reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by 80 to 95% by 2050 as compared to numbers in 1990. It will make Europe climate neutral by 2050, boosting the economy through green technology, creating sustainable energy and transport, and cutting pollution. The Green Deal isn't a law, but it will inspire a legislative firestorm. The centerpiece of the project is the European Climate Law, and beyond that, expect the coming year to see a flurry of new regulations, plans, and changes to EU law, strategies for agriculture, hydrogen, building renovation, offshore wind energy, methane pollution, sustainable investment, the circular economy, and many others, all working their way through the Brussels administration. The EU has been the region of the world where the most climate policies have been implemented, and where practical policy experimentation in the field of the environment and climate change has been taking place at a rapid pace over the last 25 years. This has led to considerable success in reducing pollution, decoupling emissions from economic growth, and fostering global technological leadership. The science makes clear how much more needs to be done in order to effectively tackle dangerous climate change from impacting the planet and its people. The effectiveness and costs of policies will be key to determining the pace of progress. The EU is making its share of efforts needed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and has put in place ambitious climate policies leading to a true decoupling of emissions and economic growth. But the problem of climate change is obviously not one that the European Union can solve alone. Thus, the experience of the EU can also serve as valuable learning by doing example for other countries as they develop their climate policies while putting their economies on a solid track towards a prosperous, low carbon development. A first important lesson is that European climate policy has been built up step by step. Learning by doing has turned out to be a key feature. Tackling the new and complex problem of climate change means that many consumers and producers need to change their habits and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Such changes also have many economy-wide repercussions, all needed to be done in a rapidly changing world and in a multi-level regulatory environment. This explains the importance of MARPOL regulations, implementing the International Convention for prevention of pollution from ships and defining measures to protect the marine environment from operational pollution. This is evidently why the European Union subscribes and has been providing support to the implementation of this convention for so long. Marine life, the global climate, and our economy and social well-being all depend on healthy seas. Despite some improvements, our assessments show that the way we currently use seas remains unsustainable. Climate change and competition for natural resources add extra pressures on the marine environment. European identified policies and measures could result in even greater improvements when they are implemented through an ecosystem-based management approach and are supported by global ocean governance framework for adaptation and replication elsewhere. Hence, the importance of MARPOL. I leave further the subjects to the experts that will animate the conference during these days. And in a conclusion, I'm very grateful for the invitation to be here, and I wish you full success with this initiative. Thank you again for the attention, and wish you fruitful discussions in the coming days.
Thank you again, Mr. Soldatic. Those words were very inspiring to hear the work of the EU and its continuing support of climate action. And we in Mtcc Caribbean and even at the university are very aware of the work, and we continue to collaborate with EU, both in terms of local and regional projects. So we are indeed very appreciative of the continued support of the European Union from a funding standpoint, from an advisory standpoint, and a collaborator in a lot of the work that we do. So I have a little departure from our planned ceremony. I'm very pleased to say that our chairman of the university has taken some time out from a Board of Governors meeting this morning to come in and say a few words on behalf of the university. I now welcome Professor Clement Imbe. Prof, you muted yourself again.
I'm okay now?
Yes, we're hearing
All
you.
right. So, good morning. As Vivian said, I'm actually on a chairing a board meeting right now, but I couldn't miss the opportunity to welcome and thank both the IMO and the EU for the opportunity that has been given to UTT and to establish the Mtcc of the Caribbean. And I'm sure, without sounding too conceited on behalf of UTT, I'm sure they have been impressed with the work that has been going on at the Mtcc. I certainly have been impressed. And all praises and kudos to our staff, Vivian, Captain Singh, Michael, Suzette, and all the others who have really been championing this cause. I wish to, of course, welcome from, and I'm glad you were able to make it and break our border closure, Dr. Jose, Michael, Mike, and Anton Rowe from the IMO. Again, we are so grateful. I believe I had met you guys before. And of course, from the EU, Mr. Soldatic. I must also recognize several people from Professor Marlon Knights from UTT, who is responsible for our external relations. Captain Sujit Singh, of course, who is the head of the Maritime Studies, and all the other delegates who are here online and those who are present. I did say that I welcome you for breaking our borders. I only meant that allegorically, because really the only way you can break our borders these days is online. it's very difficult to come here in person or for us to even leave to go somewhere. So thank you all for giving us again this opportunity. And again, I hope you don't mind my heaping praises on the staff, the leadership and staff of the Mtcc of the Caribbean for holding this conference and having such wide participation. We know that the Mtcc heads from Asia and Africa there. I don't know who else I should have mentioned. If I haven't, please forgive me. We welcome you all, and I wish you all the best for the conference over the next couple of days. And thank you, Vivian, for giving me this this little cameo appearance, this interlude that from the board meeting. Thank you again, and once again, have a great conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you for taking the time. And hopefully you didn't regret that phone call to me yesterday for foisting you into the program. So thank you again, Prof. And you know, we want to keep it tight and we want to keep the program rolling. So we are now going to hand over to Sarita that will begin the introductions for session 1.
Thank you, Vivian. Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good night to some of you. And thank you for joining us today. I would like to also thank our opening panel for bringing greetings this morning and for setting the tone for our conference to follow. Just want to make some general announcements to, as Vivian said, keep it tight during the course of our proceedings today. Tabin would have already reminded you all to keep your microphones on mute if you are not presenting or asking a question. So I'd like to re-emphasize that. And I'd also like to say that our speaker biographies are available on the conference website. So you can feel free to peruse them in full there. However, in the interest of time, we will keep the speaker intros short. I would also like to ask you to use the chat function to post your questions and keep the questions for our panel discussion at the end of today's proceedings. You can also use your raise hand function during the panel discussion if needed, right? And let's get straight into our first session of today, which is Mtcc Caribbean and the region. So first up, we have Mrs. Vivian Rambarat Parasram, Director and Head of Mtcc Caribbean, who will update us on the work of the Mtcc and future actions, Mtcc Caribbean 2021 and beyond. Vivian is an attorney at law with over 20 years experience in maritime law, international environmental law, corporate governance, and commercial law. She is currently affiliated with the University of Trinidad and Tobago, and prior to joining UTT, she spent 9 years as a researcher, principal investigator, and officer in charge of the Legal and Policy Research Program at the Institute of Marine Affairs. Vivian continues to demonstrate her ability to successfully manage major commercial and academic projects through the Mtcc. And with that, I would like to ask her to begin.
Thank you, Sarita. Let me just confirm that you all can see my screen.
Yes,
okay,
you're
great.
up and running.
Thank you. So this morning, I'm just going to give you all an update as to where we are in terms of the Mtcc. And, you know, it's been really intense going under the pandemic. I think a lot of people have worked harder than they ever did before because, you know, we're not switching off. Similarly, the Mtcc has progressed on quite an aggressive agenda since the start of the pandemic, as we had to transition into a lot of virtual spaces, online events. So what have we been up to? Getting straight into our update. We essentially had a series of activities so that we can facilitate the ongoing capacity building initiatives, which is the heart of the Gmn project, building capacity across different parts of the world with respect to climate action and progressing that agenda in the maritime domain. So in this regard, one of the first things we did, we launched a regional webinar series addressing 4 thematic areas. We've looked at promoting ratification and implementation of MARPOL. Some of the other areas included implementation, monitoring, reporting, and verification of the Sulphur 2020 compliance. We've also looked at the inclusion of domestic maritime emissions under our NDCs and the decarbonization of maritime transport. That webinar series was truly successful. We had participants, over 90% participants were spread throughout the Caribbean. Some of the major outcomes, we saw that we had an update on the level of compliance in the Caribbean. And in terms of compliance and documenting of the challenges of the implementation of MARPOL Annex 6, we had discussions on the state of implementation, including approaches and domestic and regional approaches to achieving the IMO's initial GHG reduction strategy. We've also looked at mechanisms and what we can do to enhance our regional approach towards implementation of MARPOL Annex 6. And at the end of the webinar series, I think we all left with an enhanced understanding of the requirements for national and institutional requirements and institutional capacity requirements for MARPOL Annex 6. The Mtcc has also developed an online training module, which is currently in progress. And we have, I believe, over 33 participants that are currently enrolled, representatives from across the region. This online training module on maritime energy management, as I mentioned, it is ongoing. I think the last submission from the training, the participants is due on February 28th, that it will be from my component of the training module. So the module covered 4 areas, an overall introduction to maritime energy management on board ships, alternative fuels and marine energy, and policy considerations on the operational implementation of MARPOL Annex 6. So continuing on in terms of the work of the Mtcc, we also had the opportunity to collaborate with the World Maritime University and the Danish Maritime Authority in bringing a peer-to-peer workshop on, again, the IMO, the Global Sulphur Cap 2020. We had extensive participation from across the region, and it was truly a very enlightening experience. Although this was a targeted training workshop looking at and specifically targeting port state control officers, the level of collaboration, the real life challenges of the region and particular challenges of port state control inspectors were brought to the fore, and practical methodologies in terms of inspections, what you do in the port state arena, all of these things were discussed and best practices shared. So as if you all have not been inundated enough, we have decided to give you some further publications that we would like you to read that provides a snapshot of our journey between 2017 to 2020. The Mtcc thought it was very important for us to have such a reflection, because as we go forward in our actions on climate mitigation, it's really important that we reflect on what we have done and what needs to be done. So we hope that these 3 publications provide that point of reference for further action. It provides the assessment, the reflections. So, the 3 publications, they draw heavily from the work of the pilot projects, from the work of that was included in our technology needs analysis, and it also looks at our it also looked at the data in terms of capacity building initiatives and what that data was saying to us. And we captured that in terms of our reflections on capacity building. And here we are, we're now at the convex, which culminates the work of the Mtcc in this current phase. In terms of the convex, we're hosting it through Zoom, but the virtual conference website, the conference website is up, so you can actually stream directly from the website, and you can participate in the conference from the website as well. However, if you need to chat, you're going to have to go to the Zoom link. So the conference website, the exhibition hall is all there. So we have a fully dedicated website in terms of to facilitate this convex, because having this virtual space in the absence of the ability to have actual booths and an exhibition is so very important. So we have this conference website that is currently up, available. It went live last night, and everything associated, our proceedings, our agendas, everything is available. So that's what we've been up to. Where do we go from here? You know, like all things in maritime, is going to be demand driven. Demand driven meaning we're awaiting feedback, and we continue to take the feedback from you as to what you require our interventions or our assistance in. We continue to work with our partners in trying to enhance their ability and to continue to build their capacity. However, a lot of our agendas and the key deliverables are likely to be donor driven. So where we are able to access financing, the requirements of that financing, the focus of that financing is also likely to dictate where we go. So as the Mtcc, we're continuing to provide a platform for partnerships in enhancing energy efficiency in the maritime domain. We will continue to identify environmentally and sustainable technologies that is available to the region. We continue to build our awareness and uptake of environmentally sound technology and expertise. As you know, we will also be here in terms of providing advisory services for market development, both for technology adopters and suppliers. We intend to also be monitoring our regional energy efficiency needs and continue to align training programs to meet those needs. As Professor Nice indicated this morning, through the influence of the Mtcc, through the work of the university, we have been embarking on programs on renewable energy, and hopefully we will also start beginning work tailored to marine renewables as well. So let's look at a SWOT analysis of the Mtcc, where we are and our opportunities, our weaknesses, our threats. So right now, the Mtcc is an internationally recognized institution. That is a significant strength. Again, the Mtcc is very well established to undertake its large projects, as we've demonstrated. And with the support of our host institution, we will continue to meet and exceed the requirements of our deliverables. So in terms of experience in executing large-scale projects within the Caribbean region, this has brought considerable benefit to the region in our ability and our confidence in trying to access further funding. Through our Mtcc network, through the universities we collaborate with, through the Gmn network, we have access to a varied pool of expertise for institutional collaboration. And our relationships have been extensive, and we are truly humbled by the support that we continue to get from the public and private sector. In terms of weaknesses, we recognize that visibility continues to be a challenge. You know, in terms of EU and IMO approval requirements, you know, we're currently under a single donor project. So while we continue to exist and we have continued to be grateful for the support of the EU, we also have to recognize there's that constraint, not necessarily a weakness, but a constraint in the ability to access further funding under single donor arrangements. Opportunities, the MTCC, given its work, its mandate, its performance in terms of climate action, we look forward to leveraging this to be able to access further funding. In terms of expertise and technical expertise, in terms of consultancies, we've had several requests for assistance, and some very practical and on-the-ground assistance was also requested last year by some of our Caribbean colleagues and maritime administrations. However, that became very much constrained because of the pandemic conditions. So in terms of threats, one of the things I want to highlight here is that a number of countries in the Caribbean region are dropping out of the list for overseas development assistance. And that therefore presents a further threat in terms of our eligibility to access further funding, and hampers and impedes certain access and ability to bid for certain projects. So we need to be aware of that, and we need, and I know the Caribbean and CARICOM has been signaling this and have been attempting to negotiate from a Caribbean standpoint for recognition that we are dropping off of the ODA and the impact that that may have on our ability to progress some of the climate agendas that we need, and not only in the climate agenda, marine environmental protection and environmental agendas on the whole. So in terms of the SWOT now, I'd like to move on to focus on what we are as the MTCC. You know, we are essentially a hub for relationships in terms of government, industry, academia. We represent a tight-knit hub that continues to work to progress the work. So what we need to do really is to leverage what we have become within the Caribbean region. Given that we are an internationally recognized institution, we have the performance, we have the equipment, we have the resources, we have such wonderful support from our host institution. We need to leverage this, not just as Trinidad and Tobago, but of course as the Caribbean, because we are here, and through the support of our host institution as well, we've been able to extend work beyond the scope of the MTCC through the UTT in support of the wider region. So, you know, we really look forward to leveraging us being MTCC Caribbean, hosted in a capable host institution that is continued to deliver, not just on project deliverables, but an outreach to the Caribbean community. So beyond 2021, the MTCC will be moving ahead to become a business unit within the host institution. We intend to pursue climate financing, and we are moving towards creating an institutionalized relationship with CARICOM, and that of course will be through the host institution, but at the same time with very clear recognition that this is specific to the needs of the maritime sector, and even more particularly with respect to climate action in the maritime sector. We will, of course, continue to support the work of the IMO in the region from technical standpoints, policy standpoints, wherever we can assist the regional maritime advisor, and wherever we can assist the regional networks that we will be looking at tomorrow. The MTCC is here to serve and to support. But as I mentioned before, our agendas are very likely to be focused on the regional needs and donor-driven. So with that in mind, we need to also be very specific in what we need of the MTCC and ensure that our collaborations with the Mtcc are in fact being leveraged to the regional benefit and advantage. There are several projects that Joyce mentioned at the start of the in his speech, and we will be covering and mentioning some of those in the presentations on the blue economy. All of these efforts need to be essentially feeding in to the work of climate action, and climate action is part of the work of the blue economy. So given that focus, given where we are now, the Mtcc is really looking forward to continuing its work within 2021 and beyond 2021. We look forward to hearing from our project management unit, Mr. Anton Rhodes, later this morning on the future plans and the immediate plans of the GMN. But right now, from Mtcc Caribbean's perspective, we are moving ahead. We are trying to ensure the sustainability of the Mtcc. We have the assurance of our host institution that they will continue to provide the support that they have in the past. And with that, we move forward with confidence. And with the continued support of the IMO and the EU, I have no doubt that the climate agenda in the maritime domain of the Caribbean will be progressed. So I think I am on time, right, Sarita? Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian, for that comprehensive update. And I think all of our participants now has a clear idea of what we've been doing and where we are going in the future, the near future. So I'd like to now introduce Captain Sukhjit Singh, who is our Deputy Director and Technical Head of Mtcc Caribbean. And he will be presenting to us on decarbonizing maritime transport, the technical focus for the Caribbean region. Captain Singh is a master mariner and practitioner turned academic with over 24 years in the shipping industry and the maritime sector. He is an assistant professor with the Center for Maritime and Ocean Studies at the University of Trinidad and Tobago, and overall program leader for maritime programs. Buoyed by his MS in International Management, Oil and Gas, and postgraduate diploma in Maritime Energy Management, he's actively involved in applied research in energy and safety management systems within the maritime domain, seeking to provide innovative solutions and mitigating emissions from ships and ports. So, Captain Singh, you may proceed.
Thank you, Sarita, and good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending upon time zones. Can you please confirm if you can see the slide and hear me loud and clear?
Yes,
thank you so much.
We can see you and hear you.
Okay, so I will start here. So as you can see, I mean, maritime industry is, we are familiar with it. It is enabler of the world economic trade. Approximately 80% of goods by volume and 70% by value pass through sea. And coming to the Caribbean perspective, it is essential for all of us, Caribbean countries, especially when we speak of our development. And we extend as Caribbean right from, as you can see on the slide, from Bahamas and Belize in north to Suriname and Guyana in South America. So the Caribbean consists of developing countries, we call them SIDS, or which we span along almost 3,200 kilometers. So, but what is specific to us is our proximity to the Panama and location on the major intersection of east, west, and north, south global maritime trading routes. So by virtue of this, we are not only heavily dependent on maritime transport for trade, but we also attract a lot of transshipment or hub port networks, which serves the Atlantic side of Americas. So given that background, some of islands have well-developed modern port infrastructure and offer their services as global and sub-regional transshipment hubs, while others operate catering to domestic needs. Now, As lot has been said and already what we are doing as Mtcc. So very specifically with that background of Caribbean, I will be highlighting the what we need to focus technically on. So when we are looking into that, we will see that, I mean, as you can see, the maritime traffic footprint at any given time within Caribbean Sea is approximately 4,200 vessels. Now, this 42, majority of them are pleasure yachts or vessels, but on an average about 1,400 commercial vessels, of which 833 are greater than 400 gross tonnage and 567 are further bigger in size of more than 5,000 gross tonnage. And also given the amount of traffic which passes or stops in Caribbean, we almost 15% of containerized global trade passes through it, again because, as I said, our proximity to the global trade routes. Now, as Vivian had highlighted in previous, we are a sector which is demand driven. So we understand understanding that. Now, over the past year, under the impact of global pandemic, we did see a steep decline in economic activity and associated shipping. But now, how we foresee the growth, and based on some of the recent studies, as you can see one from the IHS market, it is estimated that even though there was a contraction of 4.4% in 2020, it is expected to recover globally in 2021, with year-on-year global growth rates predicted about 4.5%, 3.9% in 2020. And this will vary for different economies, as if you can categorize advanced, emerging, or developing. So if we look at emerging and developing states, it may be anywhere between 5.7 to 4.2, sorry. And linking this growth in, I mean, revival in the economic growth, UNCTAD also predicts the decline in trade, maritime trade within 2020, and connected to the GDP ratio for the period. The forecast of decline of maritime trade is about 4.1% in 2020. But then again, the demand, which will come up with the economic recovery, it is forecasted that seaborne trade for 2021 is estimated to recover by about 4.8%. So as of now, we know predicting the impact on maritime trade and the timing and the scale of the recovery is loaded with uncertainty, right? And if I call that word, it remains an overriding theme for last 1 year. But hopefully, as we all hope, that things will be stable coming forward. Now, looking at the long term, what are the expectations from the sector? Because that's important to understand when we want to focus on technical needs. So this increase in trade will lead to, I mean, is linked to the growth in economic activity, which will undoubtedly leads to the social development. But the scale of, when we look at when we think about the sustainable development, this economic growth can lead to an unbalanced third factor of environmental protection, right? If it is not being uniformly weighted. So with increase in maritime traffic, there is corresponding impact on environment and air quality. So even though the role of maritime transport in addressing the global sustainability is important, imperative, and it is being recognized, especially in this pandemic where the supply chains were kept alive through maritime trade. But the emissions from the ships, which they contribute to many of the, I mean, these emissions, they cause many environmental sustainable challenges. And when we look at so it means whatever we are looking forward into the technologies, the environmental sustainability has to be key, and this will require a mitigation of all the risks associated with GHG emissions or ocean health or other impacts influenced by the energy use or transport operations from our sector. Now, looking at the GHG emissions specifically, perhaps the most definitive statement on where we stand on maritime GHG emissions, it is contained in the fourth IMO Ghg study, which was released last year. So the results are worthy of a note. I mean, if you look at the results, first of all, the study found that total Ghg emissions, both international and domestic, including CO2, carbon dioxide, methane, and N2O, when expressed in CO2 equivalents, have increased from 977 million tons in 2012 to 1076 million tons in 2018, which is about 9.5% or 9.6 to be accurate percentage increase. Now, the share of emissions of global anthropogenic emissions has also increased from 2.76 in 2012 to 2.89% in 2018. And based on the on this latest study, emissions are projected to increase from about 90% of 2008 emissions in 2018 to up to 130% of 2008 emissions by 2050. And these figures between 90 to 130% are based on range of long-term economic and energy scenarios. Now that puts us in a very questionable situation, I would say, where according to when we speak about the initial IMO Ghg reduction strategy coming from 2018, we have ambitions, right? And we can divide those ambitions into two categories for easy understanding. First one is volumetric target, as you can see, which is about 50% absolute GHG emission reduction by 2050 compared to 2008 levels. And the second target is more on energy intensity target. So basically, more related to the carbon CO2 emission, equivalent emission per transport work. So 70% carbon intensity per ton per nautical mile reduction by 2050 compared to 2008 levels. There is an intermediate target of 40% by 2030 on that. So clearly, looking at this understanding of the projections and ambitions as global maritime transport, we can see we are at crossroads. Demand growth can no longer be taken for granted, right? The dominant business strategy has reached its limit, and the sector, we have to find answers to deal with it. The largest challenge, I would say so far, that is how to decarbonize. Now, also, if we look at the how the I would say the what is the major fuel and how it is being used, which ships are using it. So as you see, I mean, we can still see the categories of bulk carrier and container and the traditional tankers consuming most of it. But it is also interesting to see that energy used for propulsion remains the primary demand for energy across all ship types, right? So, I mean, there are ship types like cruise ships or refrigerated bulk and some miscellaneous fishing vessels where total propulsion demand is equivalent to their auxiliary or heat energy demand. But still, the major fuel is consumed for vessels while they are at sea doing their voyages. So, clearly, I mean, we have to look into, so when we're looking at the areas of focus of the new technology, so propulsion energies, and especially for in case of cruise ships or refrigerated bulk, while they are alongside or auxiliary systems, energy required for their auxiliary systems. But bringing all that to the focus of Caribbean, I mean, this is again the focus of the decarbonization measures that can contribute to reaching IMO targets with context of what exists presently within the Caribbean, right? As you can see, the average age is about 11 years of a vessel operating here. This is based on the data which Mtcc collected over the period of last 3 years. So clearly, if we see the lifespan of a vessel, and so how we can improve this existing fleet, and plus what we will need to replace the existing fleet. I mean, how that can be more efficient, right? So within our existing fleet, the data which we collected based on that, again, average age is 11 years. Most vessels have mature technologies on board. 72% of them are already achieving energy efficiency using hull coatings or other means, like 48% have waste heat recovery system on board. If we look at the use of operational measures exist among all categories of vessels based on the data. And also data reflects or reveals that HFO continues to be the dominant fuel of choice, right? When we talk about non-mature technologies based on energy recovery or renewable sources, they are rarely utilized, with only 1% of ships having solar panels installed, for example, I mean, based on the data. And that is a questionable figure, I would say, as a researcher, because we are operating within the Caribbean, where we have prevailing environmental conditions to promote favorable scope of solar and wind-based technologies. Also, when we look at the driving factors from the past, it is evident that technology transition has been driven by the regulations. But these, again, I mean, IMO is continuously reviewing, and we already heard that in November, the 75th session of MEPC, there are some new revision coming in, which will be in front of MEPC again for approval and to be amending the MARPOL Annex 6. But again, this is required. I mean, the regulations have driven the technology, but then again, more review of these regulations is required. Why so? Because if we look at the existing ships in all class categories, they already meet and some of them over comply with what is post 2025 requirements, right? So regulatory factor is playing, but then again, is that enough? That is the question which we need to look from technical perspective. Because almost 3/4 of new container ships, almost about 71%, which contribute to quarter of global ship CO2 emissions, as you saw in the previous slide. Containers are the most consume the most of HFO, right? But they already comply with the phase 3 EEDI requirements. And the best 10% of new container ships are already almost twice as efficient as requirements were almost 10 years away, right? So this similar over compliance is observed in all ship categories, right? So it means clearly we need to look into the regulatory requirements also, which drive the technology. Achieving the sustainability targets as defined in the IMO strategy is not straightforward, and it will depend upon widespread of adoption of various low carbon technologies and measures. Even when we need to comply with new regulations, the world of shipping must implement fundamental changes in fuels, technologies, operations, and most importantly, maybe business practices. So attention in particularly will be required towards how the incentives are provided to alternative fuel and hybrid machinery designs, and ultimate goal of transitioning to full decarbonization of vessels. So here are some of the decarbonization options what we have in front of us. So given the age of vessels operating in Caribbean, what options sorry, do we really have within the existing scope of GHG reduction? It is basically a match, or can be achieved by a mix of mature and semi-mature technical and operational measures. Now, regarding meeting the 2030 target, as mentioned previously, there are many metrics used already to measure the carbon intensity, like EEOI, which is Energy Efficiency Operational Indicator, measuring grams of CO2 per ton per nautical mile, annual efficiency ratio, gram CO2 per deadweight per nautical mile, and then kg CO2 per nautical mile as distance, or ton CO2 per hour as a time. So these metrics can either be calculated with data from the data collection system or included in the Ship Energy Efficiency Management Plan guidelines. EOI takes account the actual cargo transported and is probably better reflection of the true carbon intensity. However, AER only takes the deadweight into consideration. And also, based on the 4th GHG study, industry has already achieved about 29% reduction in when we look at the AER figure, right, compared to 2008. So a further analysis of voyage-based EOI reveals that container ships and bulk carriers have already achieved a reduction of about, as I said, about 30–35%. And bulk carriers a remarkable reduction of 60%. A lot of this has to be associated with operational practices of just-in-time or slow steaming. All that is required. So if we take the annual efficiency ratio as a proxy for carbon intensity, international shipping has achieved already about 20% or 21% reduction against the ambition of 40% reduction targeted for 2030. But we need to look at the 70% carbon reduction, which is 2050 target, and that cannot be achieved without alternative fuels, right? So It is expected that by 2050, 64% of total amount of CO2 reduction will be contributed by alternative fuels. Now, fleet owners are faced with multitude of options when looking at future-oriented solutions. As you can see, fuel and energy sources such as ammonia, hydrogen, methanol, biofuels, bioliquid, synthetic fuels, to name a few. The selection is made more complex by varying stages of market readiness and infrastructure availability before they can be considered viable for maritime. So overall, I would say this is critical time, because if we invest in a vessel today, we expect it still to be in service in 2030 or post 2040 point. Therefore, the pathway we need to focus on also need to ensure that when the new green fuels finally become viable, we don't have to scrap the ships and invest in a new one, right? So they should be able to upgrade from a continued compliance and continue to complying or trade after that, right? So therefore, this is not just the concern of those commissioning a new build vessel. So given the demands of the upcoming regulatory requirements and gathering social pressure, as time is running out year upon year, the issue also becomes a central one for the existing fleets, right? So here is a quick look of fuel transition captured from DNV. So developing and implementing new carbon neutral fuels within next 5 to 10 years is a real challenge. As you can say, it takes a long time. LNG is a good example, which took more than 50 years to come as a marine fuel. But now the challenge is within next 10 years, shipping industry will need a new fuel, most likely carbon free for its entire fleet. Technical point of view, there are potential developments, combinations of energy sources or energy mixes being considered, but focus needs to be on the current ships that can use future fuels with minimum retrofit costs. And there are barriers, as I said, cost, availability of infrastructure, or the onboard storage requirement. So as we transition into our pathway towards decarbonization, long-term decarbonization, and to achieve that complete decarbonization, we have to start looking not only at tank to propeller approach of emissions, but we need to be looking at, as I said, well to wake or wind to wake approach, where we need to see well to tank emissions and then tank to propeller. My colleagues will be discussing tomorrow more on the life cycle emission of marine fuels, and that should be taken into account. So as we see that HFO is prominent fuel, but it is also highest on the GHG emissions when we combine the well to tank and the tank to propeller emissions together. So coming down towards the hydrogen as a maybe a fuel of the future. So focus will be there on technology, which will basically be power to fuel technology. This was developed late back in 1950s, but never actually applied to produce synthetic fuels because of the amount of energy required in this process. However, with the advent of technology, the cost of energy has declined, and especially the carbon neutral energy sources as wind and solar power are now available. And power to fuel is promising to achieve the final IMO ambitions, but it will certainly need substantial investment to deliver the fuel in sufficient quantities, right? And as a fully renewable energy source, power to fuel is currently very promising. So this is again something we would need to focus as a region, how we are not lagging in adopting these future technological concepts. Coming back to focus on what we need to do as a region, right? We need to focus on including technology demonstration in our national plans. So when I say national plans or national action plans, there is again a thing where now along the fourth GHG study, there is a clear definition for domestic versus international. And it did reflect that using this new approach of domestic versus international emissions, there was only 70% of those emissions which we saw earlier of 1,076 million tons, which were from international shipping. So saying it another way, 30% of total shipping emissions were from within domestic emissions, right? Or they come within or fall within the domestic emissions. And that is now can be covered under national GHG inventories, and targets can be included in the national action plans. And this is in line with IPCC's definition. And this will allow, as previously discussed, it may allow us to attract funds, because once it is within the national action plans, to bring the required technology or support or provide the finance for the required technology. The second thing is we cannot support green ships in absence of green ports, right? So investment is required in green infrastructure to support these ships, like onshore power system, bunkering infrastructure for LNG, methanol, or uptake of other alternative fuels, battery, hybrid, methanol. These are just some examples. And then some other operational measures. Now, ships and ports are two crucial players, and therefore, and their operational performance determines the level of efficiency achieved. So, which will certainly save fuel and associated emissions. So, information exchange across the maritime logistic chain is still very traditional in most of the Caribbean ports. We need to, up our game in there. We did spoke about the port CDM concepts and maritime informatics, and certainly we have examples where we can implement that technology to gain operational efficiencies. We need to explore the technology transition pathways by narrowing down technology and fuel options, as well as mapping out safety implications or the required regulations for scaling up of new fuels. So we need to focus on that. We need to motivate first movers to kickstart shipping's zero emission future by exploring policies or demand drivers and funding mechanism to motivate and, most importantly, de-risk the first mover investments. And most importantly, also close the competitiveness gap for zero emission shipping by exploring policy instruments and maybe some market-based measures or introducing some incentives for alternative fuel users, right, to close the competitiveness gap between conventional and alternative fuels to encourage the mass uptake of that option, right? So maritime transportation involves many stakeholders, right? And the latest in the wake of the response to this sustainability concerns, a lot of motivation has come within the industry for maritime sector, and unlikely source, I would say, the end consumer charters are more and more concerned about these aspects now. But irrespective whether the drive towards decarbonization arrives from the consumer behavior or regulatory pressure, or simply through increased momentum from within the industry or its stakeholders, the most underlying point is technology will be required to facilitate it, right? It doesn't matter who is driving it, but technology will be the facilitator, right? So we need to focus on these technologies, and this is where I will say that the future projects of MTCCs can help you, right? There was a resolution 323 in MEPC 74 where it was encouraged cooperation between port and shipping sector, right? So certainly there is an area for us to work on regulation, technical and economic actions within the sector, which can include development of onshore power supply, preferably from renewable sources, provision of alternative low carbon or zero carbon fuels, implementing of incentives, promoting sustainable low carbon shipping, and the optimization of port calls, including just-in-time arrival for ships. So there is a lot which can be done, and we know that these the shipping, not only the ships, but the ports, which work as nodes within the global supply chain, they generate environmental impacts through various other functions like cargo handling, connectivity to hinterland traffic, or some other activities, right? So the future pilot projects must therefore be aligned to the emergence of these green ports concepts, which can support green ships and within the Caribbean region, right? And on, as you can see on slide, there can be demonstration projects, there can be prototype for the fuels developed within the region, right? And why I am so looking forward to all this is there is one very important aspect when we look at the recovery post-COVID. I apologize, I might have gone over the time, but quickly, the countries of the Caribbean community, or as we call CARICOM, with a population of about 19 million, we have an average age of 32 years, which is high percentage of population aged between 18 to 45, right? Which is fairly well educated, technology savvy. This presents a very modern workforce and presents a strong opportunity for us to invest and take a technological leap in the maritime sector. Means technology exists, we just need to bring that into the region, right? So over the next, means today and over the next 2 days, we will be discussing some other concepts or various concepts in more detail, along with the ongoing initiatives within maritime domain. So I request that you please do reach out to us as and when you feel as your regional maritime technology cooperation center, so we can assist you within the how to focus on technology and what projects we can assist you with. And with that, I will close. Thank you very much for your attention, and I apologize for going slightly over my time, Sarita. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sakchit. So that's not a problem. I think we all agree that your information presented was very good, very comprehensive, and provided a lot of insight for many of us into those considerations. I'd like to go straight into session 2, the Global Mtcc Network, where we'll hear from the IMO and our sister Mtccs. So I'd like to welcome Mr. Anton Rhodes, Project Manager at the Gmn Project Coordination Unit of the IMO, to present us on the future of the Gmn network. Anton holds a BA Honours in International Relations from the University of Aberdeen, and in 2009 graduated with a master's degree in International Relations from the University of Cape Town, South Africa. He has over 10 years experience leading the design, implementation, and monitoring of major projects, with particular emphasis on capacity building and technology transfer. He has spent 4 years as a manager with the Global Oil and Gas Industry Association for Environmental and Social Issues, and in 2013 joined the Oil Spill Response Limited as project manager. He functions currently in the role of project manager of the Global Mtcc Network project. Anton?
Great. Sarita, thank you very much for that introduction. Can you just confirm that my presentation is up?
Yes, it's up and we are hearing you clearly.
Excellent. Thanks very much. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all participants. I'd like to present now on the GMN project, focusing on its achievements and what are the possibilities for the future. And as our colleagues from Mtcc Pacific are not able to join us because of the time difference, I'll also be providing a short update on their activities in the Pacific region. But before I get into these details, I'd like to provide some context in terms of the broader issue of shipping and GHG emissions. So the latest data shows that international shipping emits around 2% of global CO2 emissions. And as Captain Singh has just presented, there is a strong potential for this figure to grow if appropriate action is not undertaken. Put simply, as demand and trade levels grow, so do shipping emissions. And looking at emission projections, under business as usual scenarios, 2050 emissions could represent as much as 130% of 2008 emissions. So to combat these shipping emissions, both real and potential, the IMO's initial GHG reduction strategy was adopted in 2018. And this sets out a vision to phase out GHG emissions as soon as possible in this century. Within the strategy, there are ambitious targets, such as a 50% reduction from GHG emissions by 2050. And the big question now is, how will the ambitious targets be achieved? So as follow-up to the strategy, the IMO's Marine Environment Protection Committee, MEPC, is now focused on implementation of short, medium, and long-term measures. The type of measures being proposed by member states include strengthening ship design and operational requirements. So this is focused primarily on the Energy Efficiency Design Index and Ship Energy Efficiency Management Plan. But taken alone, this will not be enough to reach 2050 targets. Innovative measures such as low carbon or zero carbon fuels and technologies will represent at least 50% of the overall reduction effort. So in summary, big changes in the shipping sector are now urgently required. To achieve these changes, though, it requires an unprecedented level of collaboration across the entire global maritime value chain. And it's very encouraging that since adoption of the initial strategy, several partnership initiatives, including the private sector, have built upon the momentum for lower emission shipping. Now, as part of this move towards greater collaboration, there is also recognition that leaving nobody behind is of crucial importance for the successful implementation of the strategy. And this relates most specifically to the challenges being faced by small island developing states and least developed countries. These countries and regions must be supported if they are expected to contribute. And it's within this space of providing technical support and capacity building to developing regions that the GMN project is playing an important role. So what is the GMN project? We heard during the opening remarks that it is an EU and IMO partnership project launched in 2016. And as already mentioned, the project is focused on supporting least developed countries and small island developing states to reduce GHG emissions. To achieve this objective, Maritime Technology Cooperation Centres, MTCCs, have been established in 5 developing regions to support key stakeholders. And these centres are now based in Africa, Asia, Caribbean, Latin America, and Pacific. Now, I think it's important to explain the GMN concept because it is different from the usual IMO approach to capacity building. Instead of activities and events being organized and controlled from IMO headquarters, the GMN approach is that a much greater level of responsibility is handed over to the participating regions. So what that means is that the MTCCs manage their own budgets, they develop and implement their own work plans, and they employ their own staff. By taking this approach, we are helping to institutionalize capacity building at the local level. And looking at this from a long-term perspective, we intend that these centers will become fully self-sustaining, continuing long after the project has closed. And I should emphasize the point here that the project has created more ownership and achieved far more than was originally foreseen. Based on feedback from participating countries, the centres are a great success and are looked at as a new way of undertaking regional cooperation. Now, I'd like to give you an idea of the level of activity of the project. So since its launch in 2016, the GMN has established and made operational 5 MTCCs. We have completed well over 50 capacity building workshops with 2,000 plus attendees receiving training and advice. And each of the centers has successfully completed technology and data collection pilot projects. And it's also worth noting that the GMN has expanded to include branch offices in Myanmar, Cambodia, and Samoa. This expansion was not planned, but came about as a response to requests from countries within the regions. And I also think it's important to highlight the very high level of visibility and outreach activities. At the IMO level, the project has been promoted in multiple forums, including COP, MEPC, and UN Oceans Conference. 2 GMN short films have been produced and countless news items have been released through all of the social media channels. And complementing this international level outreach has been the activities of the centers in region, where they have engaged in multiple intergovernmental and private sector forums. So having given this overview of the project, what I'd like to do now is shine a spotlight on Mtcc Pacific to give you a clearer picture of what has been happening outside of the Caribbean region. So in the Pacific, the team consists of 3 full-time and 1 part-time staff. The team are based within the South Pacific Community Headquarters in Fiji, at SPC, except for one of the technical officers who is based in Samoa at the newly established branch office. Since the centre's launch in 2017, the team have been very active in engaging across the region. For example, there have been technical training workshops provided in 8 different countries to ship operators and maritime administrators. And the Mtcc has assisted in the implementation of ship energy efficiency management plans on 39 separate vessels. The centre has also been driving the agenda of energy efficiency improvements in shipping by organising several regional ministers' meetings on the subject. But perhaps the most impressive achievements of the Mtcc have focused on their work to retrofit vessels and also to help improve port infrastructure. So in 2019, Mtcc Pacific completed the retrofitting of a landing vessel in Vanuatu and also applied improved operational measures. The results have been very impressive. Energy consumption was reduced by 43% with an estimated annual GHG reduction of 101 tonnes. There were also significant cost savings. This type of improvement was replicated on another larger vessel in Samoa, also in 2019. The results were very similar with significant cost savings and GHG reduction. So the Pacific Centre has also helped with improving energy efficiency at selected ports. The centre has undertaken 12 port energy audits in 8 different countries, which have led to major improvements. Just to give one example, the Mtcc audit in the Solomon Islands led to new infrastructure being built and new measures being introduced. Overall energy use in Oniara port dropped by 8%, which is a saving of 15 tonnes of GHG emissions and about 11,000 euros a month. So I use this moment to make the point that I've only had time to focus in detail on one of the centres, but in all the Mtcc regions, the pilot projects and capacity building activities have been successfully implemented and are having a real impact. And I'm very glad to say that we'll be joined by Mtcc Asia and Africa during this session. So when we look ahead, the GMN has a clear role in many different areas. Captain Singh touched on this during his presentation. On the immediate agenda, that is in 2021, the focus is upon dissemination of pilot project results, continuing with capacity building activities, and also ensuring the centre's sustainability. If we look further ahead, we see the Mtccs undertaking new pilot projects or perhaps expanding on the projects already undertaken. Also of key importance will be assisting countries in the development and implementation of national action plans to reduce emissions from shipping. Finally, the centres are perfectly positioned to provide a platform for partnerships. So whether it's public or private sector, Mtccs have resources that would be a great benefit to any potential partner. Each Mtcc has strong technical expertise. They are based in region and have well-established regional networks. They are also, through this project, obviously linked to both IMO and EU. So from the IMO's perspective, we are keen to utilize the centres, and already they are being connected to many of our GHG initiatives, such as the IMO UNEP Maritime Innovation Forum the Green Voyage Project, the Next Gen Project, and GHG Smart. There is a lot happening in this space within IMO, and we're looking at ways to connect the MTCCs to these broader initiatives. In IMO's efforts to implement the GHG strategy and to ensure no country is left behind, MTCCs have a very important role to play. A quick word on the current status of the GMN. So we have, like all projects, been severely impacted by COVID-19. Due to the pandemic, we are currently negotiating for a non-cost extension of the project that, if accepted, will push back the project closure from June 21 to March 22. So this non-cost extension is important for many reasons, but I think the most important is to ensure long-term sustainability of the centres. The more time we have, the more opportunity we have to bridge to longer-term sustainability options. So whilst all the centres have taken strides to become more financially self-reliant, the impact of COVID has delayed these plans to different extents. In terms of future funding, this has been touched on by Vivian. You know, I make similar points that the plan after 21 is one where there's much greater diversification. Currently, we're under a single donor arrangement. In the future, we hope that there's 3 different key kind of pillars which can support the GMN and, of course, the individual MTCCs. The first pillar focuses on funds that might be channeled from IMO through a specially created trust fund, and also by connecting MTCCs to IMO projects and technical cooperation activities. The second pillar focuses on major donors that might be interested to channel directly to MTCCs or potentially through IMO, as is the current arrangement. The third pillar are funds that can be generated by the MTCCs themselves, for example, through providing consultancy services, receiving in-kind support, and or the establishment of regional industry alliances. The future of the GMN will depend very much on the progress that can be made in these areas in the next year. And we've already heard from MTC Caribbean on some of the plans that they have in place to become more financially self-reliant. So I'd like to conclude by emphasizing that MTCCs are now perfectly positioned to support their respective regions, to work with international and local stakeholders, and to help drive forward the changes which are required to decarbonize shipping. The recipients of their work have and will continue to be least developed countries and small island developing states. GMN has a key role to ensure that no country or region is left behind. And I'll just finish by pointing you towards our GMN website. If you're interested to find out about the broader network, then please visit the GMN website. We have details on all the activities of all the MTCCs in the different regions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anton. Thanks for giving us that information on the future of the GMN and the sustainability efforts, and for also providing an update on the work of the MTCC Pacific, as they weren't able to be with us today. I'd like to go into the presentation by Ms. Lydia Ghg. I hope I pronounced that correct, Lydia, who is the head of MTCC Africa, and she's going to present on the work of the MTCC in the African region. So while she's loading up her presentation, Lydia has been engaged in the shipping and maritime industry in Kenya throughout her career. She's an international maritime law lawyer and specializes in the field of marine environmental law, especially on matters of climate change in the shipping and maritime industry. Within recency, she has worked in both private and public sector as a maritime legal expert. She has experience working as a consultant for the IMO on marine environmental law issues. She has lectured in maritime law in public universities and advised local and international organizations on maritime related issues and policy. She holds a master's degree in international maritime law from the International Maritime Law Institute of Malta. So Lydia, we'd like to welcome you and ask you to go ahead and proceed.
Thank you, Sarita. Thank you. Thank you very much. As the introduction from Sarita says, my name is Lydia Ghg. I hope I am audible enough. And my
Yes,
presentation,
we are hearing you clearly.
Thank you. My presentation will focus on what MTCC Africa has been doing in the region, what we have covered as we look forward to sustainable shipping for our sustainable planet. And this presentation is of course for the MTCC Caribbean Conference, starting today, the 24th of February, 2021. Now, the role of MTCC Africa in sustainable shipping is basically to ensure that the maritime sector does have the ability to have a mitigation factor on the heavy fossil fuel currently in the market. And some of the aspects
Lydia, your audio faded out. Can you still hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Sorry, there was a bit of a technical hitch.
No problem.
So I'll just try pick up from where I was with the
Sure.
with the presentation. And the first slide, we were talking of the background of MTCC Africa with the global MTCC's network. And basically, MTCC Africa has been looking at the maritime industry from the regional perspective and how we shall be promoting the same. And MTCC Africa is one of the 5 MTCCs. However, if I could go back to this first slide, MTCC Africa took the approach of focusing on energy efficiency and reducing emissions from pollution in the shipping sector, basically through the voyages that the ships are taking once they are out at sea. And of course, this is through the good initiative of the IMO that was set up at the MEPC. And being hosted at J.K. Watt Center, some of the objectives of MTCC Africa are as follows. Most importantly, we seek to improve regional compliance with international regulations on energy efficiency and shipping, specifically putting into perspective the MAPOL Annex 6. And more recently, we are paying very keen attention to the implementation and creation of a roadmap for the IMO initial GHG strategy. In addition to this, our other objective is to ensure that we promote the uptake of low carbon technologies through operations at the port, and this is heavily tied to energy efficiency. We also have a key mandate of raising awareness in the region, and raising awareness is closely linked to research and development as one of our other sustainability strategies, whereby I'll talk about this towards the end of the slide. Now, the role of MTCC Africa in promoting sustainable shipping from the African perspective, how we have been able to solidly ensure that the entire region comes together full circle. And as you can see, the African continent is pretty wide and very heavily, we have many countries, that's what I'm trying to say. And we have also ocean space around most of the coastal countries. How we have been able to reach out to most of the entire African region is through the ocean space and the maritime, through the maritime administrations. And we have the regional focal point partners, whereby we have committees that sit in the West Atlantic of the African continent, the West Atlantic Ocean. We also have committees that sit on the East African section, and that is the Indian Ocean, part of the Western Indian Ocean that also Kenya is part of. We also have the Mediterranean, and those are countries that are in the north of Africa. How we go full circle in this is that the regional coordinators are specifically derived from the Maritime Administration and or the Ports Authority. Therefore, we have a wider pool where we are even in a position to understand specific country needs, because the committees have a mix of several parties, IMO party states, and we are able to understand their needs from IMO level. And then we also ensure that we relate it to what MTCC Africa covers, and we also relate it to our mandate, which is the capacity building to mitigate climate change in the shipping and maritime industry. I'll also highlight that with the regional focal points, we ensure that we meet them every month. And this is a way to make sure that we are at par with every emerging technology. Much as we have that going on, and it is still going on, MTCC Africa participated in a pilot project, which was part of our deliverables. We had the first pilot project, which was the energy efficiency pilot project, and looking at the port technologies in the African ports. We also had the pilot project 2, which was the fuel consumption and data collection, whereby electronic tablets were fitted into engine rooms in various ships while they were out at sea completing specific voyages, whereby our experts were able to, the MTCC Africa technical team experts were able to work together with the ship owners and the shipping lines, as you can see highlighted, to see how the EEOI calculations can be done and gauge. We were able to gauge the types of emissions and the extents to which emissions are able to be mitigated. And this was a success. It was a bit of a challenge because at times when the crew are out at sea, there can be a bit of communication challenges, but we were able to mitigate this. In addition to this, we also had the energy efficiency pilot project, which was very successful. We conducted the audits, tier 2 audits at the Port of Mombasa, level 2 audits, because previously, prior to MTCC Africa being on board, they had done a tier 1 audit. And in the tier 2 audit, recommendations were given by MTCC Africa through the experts. And I must highlight that the experts from MTCC Africa are part of the consortium members, that is the Maritime Administration and the Ports Authority. And for the energy efficiency project, the lead expert is a senior engineer at the Kenya Ports Authority. And he has been in a position to ensure that the Port of Mombasa has been implementing the said pilot project recommendations. For example, one of the ways that the Port of Mombasa is looking to keenly implement this is having a long-term consideration for cold ironing, and that is shore power. I understand they are having deliberations as to how this can be effected. In addition to that, they also are putting into consideration the use of energy saving machinery at the berth of Mombasa, and this will be an advantage because, for example, the lighting that is used, they would introduce the coolers and the chillers at the port, and they would at the berths as well, and also the LED lights and some electronic configuration to ensure that they are definitely in abidance to the regulation 4 of MAPOL Annex 6. And the energy efficiency audit, we also stretched it down to the other regions in Africa so as to get a feel of how the region is looking at this. And in this being said, MTCC Africa worked very closely with the Port of Cameroon, whereby in the year 2019, we conducted a Tier 1 level audit at the Port of Douala. The Tier 1 level audit again was extremely successful, and I say this extremely successful because recently last year they contacted us looking to have another port in Douala, a separate port within the same country, known as the Port of Kribi, since we looked at the Port of Douala having the same audit. And we understand that at the port of Douala, they are implementing the recommendations of the level 1 audit that was conducted through MTCC Africa. Now, these are some of the examples that the region is putting into perspective through MTCC Africa. Of course, the continent is big. We cannot be able to reach out to each and every country. Thus, we have the very enlightening discussions with the focal point coordinators. And recently we have gotten suggestions from specific countries, yet to be confirmed, around 4 countries, who are looking forward to have trainings from MTCC Africa. And we are looking at doing this from a consultancy perspective on how to mitigate energy efficiency from the industry and how to ensure that their ports are energy efficiency friendly. And the going phrase that they use is the Green Ports Initiative. Therefore, I see MTCC Africa working very closely with these countries in the region. In addition to this, similar to what I had highlighted earlier, how does MTCC Africa work together? Much as we have the practical aspect, how do we implement some of the regulatory aspects, which are pretty much elements that a person has to skim through and read through? We thus have the capacity building arm of MTCC Africa. Prior to the corona pandemic, MTCC Africa was holding, and I'm sure MTCC Caribbean was at the same level point, we were holding face-to-face workshops, but now we had to move virtual, and most of our continued workshops in the region are virtual, and we shall see more of what we have been doing. The advantage with what we do as MTCC Africa is that with regard to energy efficiency, the continent currently is very progressive in implementing the IMO GHG strategy. Therefore, we are at an advantage based on the discussions that were held last year during the MEPC 75. And this is one of the ways that we look to partner with future IMO projects, for example, the Green Voyage, to put this element into perspective. Now, when I mentioned the element of energy efficiency, it definitely borders on the port sustainability plans that we have to ensure that, again, translates to the Green Port Policy. And the Green Port Policy considers the above description. As you can see, it has to ensure that it works closely with the port communities, the environment, the workplace, and the people, and also the smart port operations. And of course, the smart port operations are closely linked to emissions. This is also very closely linked to the port state control that is conducted by the maritime authorities, and the port state control officers are definitely going to implement the MAPOL Annex 6. Given that MTCC Africa is hosted at the Jomo Kenyatta University, we also have a team of researchers at the university, and in our next plan, we are looking into researching onto the successes. For example, some of the recommendations that have come off from the pilot projects and are currently ongoing, and the team at the university is looking into how this can be published, and discussions are still ongoing so that the academic aspect and the research angle is considered. As I had mentioned, we also have the capacity building element between 2020 and 2021, that we needed to ensure it's still running full course. Based by the highlights above, this did continue, and this was done virtually. We had a webinar with, most recently, we had a webinar with one of the North African states, with actually almost all of the North African states, and we got very key recommendations and also support from an organization known as REMPEC, an IMO affiliate that is based in Malta and works very closely with all countries that border the Mediterranean Sea. Now, the advantage with North African countries is that their shipping industry is mostly based almost outside of the region when you look geographically. And this is an aspect that we felt we really need to promote. And we are currently working on an MOU with specific North African countries for continuity, because some of them are, again, very progressive, and they also have very enlightening energy efficiency considerations that we can use in the industry to promote the aspects that our mandate entails. We also had awareness on women in decarbonization. IMO is very keen to ensure that SDG 5 is promoted in the industry. That was a highlight that we had. We have been working very closely as well with countries from the Francophone speaking regions in Africa, and one of the SAID countries is Benin. We had a workshop with them, which was very progressive, and we noted that they have ratified MAPOL Annex 6, and they are now taking the practical steps as to implementation. Again, that is a highlight of what we have been covering as a region, as we look forward to progressing beyond 2021 and within 2021 post-March. We are currently working very closely with our government to ensure that the region is well represented. As I come to the close of my presentation, it's very important for me to highlight that Mtcc Africa has a team that works in the office permanently, and we also have support from the Ports Authority and the Maritime Authority. In addition to this, we have support from the government, that is the Ministry of Transport, through the State Department of Maritime Affairs. And much as we are in this convex setup, we also have a setup coming soon, and we'll invite you to it. And that is all from my end. We are reachable on the above angles, and we look forward to future discussions around this topic from the African perspective, as we look as to how we can work together with Mtcc Caribbean to ensure that we green port technologies and mitigate climate change in the maritime and shipping industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lydia. It's always so great to, hear from our sister MTCCs, see the similarities, the different areas of research, and the synergies that are created within this network, and to be able to support each other in what we're doing. So we'd like to extend a special thank you to both yourself and Mr. Wei Ran, who is presenting next, for being here with us and contributing to our conference today. With that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Wei Ran, the head of Mtcc Asia, and he will be providing an update on the work of the Mtcc in the Asian region. Mr. Wei Ran graduated from Shanghai Maritime University and World Maritime University. He has dedicated himself for many years to maritime education and training, maritime safety and pollution prevention, maritime safety management, maritime policies and management. He has represented China at various IMO conferences and meetings and accomplished a series of research. His professional study and experience expanded further with his work at Mtcc Asia. He is now well experienced in the control of greenhouse gas emissions from shipping, IMO's conventions and standards for air pollution and maritime greenhouse gas technology research. So welcome, Mr. Turan.
He's muted.
Mr. Ran, I think you're muted still.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chairman Sarita. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your introduction. And hello to all dear distinguished guests and speakers and friends. I'm very much happy to see you through the line after a long time, you know. It's my great honor to speak on behalf of Mtcc Asia about the work of Mtcc Asia in the past 3 or 4 years. Let me show you my slides. Before my start, let me introduce also my colleague, technical officer, Professor Zhou Feng. He's also staying in this group, and I request a leave for the seminar after this presentation, because I have an early meeting tomorrow morning. So forgive me for the early leave, maybe. And okay, so let me start the presentation now. In the past more than 3 years, the MTCC work of Mtcc Asia, first of all, is the capacity building activities, of course. We did more than 30 conferences in addition to those required by the IMO and the EU contracts. And we do lot of conferences, meetings, and seminars and workshops. So with these activities, we trained more than 800 trainees from, more than 30 countries, in particular those countries from Asian region. So those are the photos. Taken from the practical capacity building activities. Yeah, but if you divide or categorize the capacity building activities, you can see this side, this corner belongs to, for instance, a kind of IMO workshops, IMO requested, the contracted activities. And we also have some, additional activities like a global green shipping forum. We did it every year since 2018. It's high level and also a kind of a blend of the meeting from Mtcc Asia. Affected by the COVID-19, Mtcc Asia decided to turn to online activities because of the, as I said, the COVID-19. So you see, we continued to make contributions for the capacity building promotion in this Asian region through the online technologies. So these are some pictures just to give you the idea how we organize the online activities. And lastly, of course, very important that we work closely with IMO. So we assigned delegates from Mtcc Asia as well as Shanghai Maritime University to IMO conferences. So that's the pictures from this corner. You can see some activities there. Also, to facilitate the implementation of this project, that we established 2 branch offices in Cambodia and also in Myanmar. See, we opened the 2 branch offices. We did plan to open more branches, but we realized that it's important to put it into a much more effective operation so that we can create it more. So that's why currently we have 2 branch offices. Okay, so if I can make a small summary about the capacity building activities in the Mtcc Asia, in Asia region. First of all, our working sphere is very clear. That is to focus on the Ghg and the green shipping. We think this is, of course, very important currently. I mean, according to our contract as also the designing. So this is very important, but it means that we may extend the focus to the other areas of the IMO interests. Secondly, we think we are making blend meetings. In particular, as I said, that the Global Green Shipping Forum, we think we have to continue and make it as a well-known activities in Asia. Maybe for future, I mean, in the international forum as well. Also, we think it's very important features in Mtcc Asia, that is that we established the 2 branch offices, Myanmar and Cambodia. We work with them very closely, and we find that it's very much useful to make the capacity building, and not only capacity building activity, but also the technical development as well. We recruit 2 officers in the branch office respectively, and make working plans jointly with them. So we think it's we conclude that it is very successful operation for the capacity building in future. So this is we think a quite important experience. And lastly, for the capacity building activities, we introduced the degree programs for the shipping talents in the Asian countries. Those degree programs enables the shipping talents in those areas to be rendered with a systematic maritime studies, in particular for the Ghg, I mean controlling and pollution prevention, controlling, this kind of aspects. And after 3 years study in the Shanghai Maritime University, those students will be awarded with the MSc degrees. So it means that they will stay here in Shanghai for more than 3 years. Okay, so that's something about the capacity building. Now let me report in this case the technical development activities in Asia, Mtcc. According to the plan, we have to do 2 pilot projects. The first one in Mtcc Asia, we make the research and also technical development for the optimization of ship trimming. So for the the second technological program is a compulsory program, so-called. for the purpose of the fuel oil data collection. It is required by IMO, of course. And the third one is that we devised a system so-called the Ghg monitoring system based on the AIS information. And the last one is, of course, for the IMO convention research and also study various kind of technical study reports, etc., etc. So for the data collection, our initiative is to invent a kind of a methodology that the ship operators on board can transmit, can collect, can report the data for the fuel oil consumption data easily, I mean, in a very convenient way. That's why we introduced the E-system, I mean, for the ship fuel oil consumptions. So we, in that case, first of all, we designed for the communication systems through the satellite and combine this way for the communication. And also, it's very important we also devised a software to facilitate the report of the ship operators on board. We put them together, make it a kind of a so-called a system, reporting system. And the data can, of course, report can be made by the ship operators on board vessel, and they send it through the internet, satellite, etc., etc. So the philosophy is we devised this methodology, and we can use it. We can recommend to the ships, individual ships and operators, so that they can report, I mean, the data. And finally, of course, all the data comes into the system, and we can wrap them up and, of course, make a database. So this is the basic idea. So after this work, technical work, the technical research team in Mtcc Asia finally drafted the guidelines for the ship oil consumption data reporting, collecting and reporting. I mean, this is a manual, this is a handbook. We have circulated to the commercial vessels, ocean-going vessels, more than 2,000 vessels. So this is about the technical, I mean, application or transferring. This is the first technical program. The second is, as I said, we selected the optimization of ship streaming for the uptake of the ship energy efficiency promotion technology. The idea is we collect mountains of data, much data from the ship. The ship sends them through the satellite communication. We collected them, just deem it as kind of a database. And we use the AI technology, artificial intelligence technologies, to calculate the optimum trimming point here, for instance, this vessel. So we collected the movement information together with in collaboration with the oil consumption of the vessel in different seconds of the time. So we use AI technology to find out the optimum trimming point, so that the ship operators can decide how to trim the vessel to make it, the energy efficiency. So this is the software. It is also kind of a software based on the, as I said, the database and also the artificial intelligence. So this is the idea and the technology. And after the, completion of this pilot project, we devised the guidelines on ship trimming optimization based on the machine learning methods. And we also circulated this to the commercial vessels as well, together with the previous one. So this is the optimized, this is the technologies. Okay, the third technology, as I mentioned, that is you are encouraging the use of the AIS to monitor the energy efficiency, the GHG emissions from the ships. And this is just to give you the concept that we use the AIS information, global AIS information, and together with ship particulars movement information, and we calculate the emission of the shipborne GHG emissions. So this is the idea. We can do real-time monitoring for the emission of the ships. Okay. Okay, so that is also kind of a summary for the technical work. In this center, we are seeking for the cost-effective measures. We realized that although from the IMO, from the industry point of view, we have a series of GHG reduction technologies. According to the fourth GHG study report, we can have more than about 44, right, technical measures, for the GHG reduction. We think we have to find out cost-effective one. Because particularly in the developing countries, that the shipping companies, they need such kind of a measure. Do not rely on the big bigger investment. Okay, this is why we decide to use, the trimming optimization. And also the trimming optimization for this pilot project, we think it has a potential for future. Since the industry is, talking a lot about the intelligent ships. So the idea is we are working on the larger, database. So this kind of a database can be, also part of, information for the intelligent ships in future. And also for future intelligent ships, the ship should be able to intelligent in both safety and also pollution prevention, in particular the air pollution. So we think this technology has a great potential for future. And also we realized that, and also we implemented it, as we think that when we develop the software and also guidelines, we use the AI technologies together with IMO requirements, and also we have to take in account of the practical shipboard operations as well. So we put them together. So that's why make the technologies applicable and to different ships. Finally, we think it is very important. We should not keep the technology in the pocket. We have to transfer them to the ships, to the industry. That's why in the reality that we introduce our technologies. I mean, in particular, the 2 pilot projects in the capacity, in some capacity building activities. Like this year, we did 4 technical campaigns. The idea is that the technical campaign is, the idea is, I mean, for this campaign is we established point-to-point communication with the selected 6 countries. We talk with them how to do the, I mean, such kind of transferring and also application. We think this is quite important, okay? So this is the introduction for the second part. The general idea, come back to the general idea of the operation of the Mtcc Asia is actually very much systematic. We use systematic concepts or solutions to develop the Mtcc Asia. Okay, we use technology research, capacity building, network, and branch offices, and degree programs, etc., etc. We put all of them together. We do more, I mean, as we planned initially for the promotion of the Mtcc Asia. So we think it's quite systematic in that case. So for future, Mtcc Asia, first of all, we think it's very important. We think it is very important to make the contributions to IMO's mission and implementation of its initial strategies in combating GHG. We realized that we are facing big challenges for different countries in different areas in implementing the initial strategies, and this is very important for the industry, for the organization. I mean, to realize, to implement these strategies. So this is the general idea. The second one is that we are planning to improve more technologies. It means that we are not only to use the training optimization technologies for greener shipping. So IMO is great, and also the GHG study report is very much useful to give us to give the hints that we can go, I mean, for the technical improvements. So this is the second idea. The third one is that we think it is very important to integrate different GHG reduction measures, and also very important to adapt the different technologies for different country, for different company and different places. And this is very much important because from Mtcc Asia's point of view, we are facing with I mean, the different level of development in different, I mean, countries. So it means the measure A could be applicable for the country A, but for country B, it may not be applicable. So we have to adapt. So adaptation is very important from my point of view. So in other words, we have to tailor-make the technologies according to the needs, according to the practical situation in the individual shipping industries. So this is the first point we would like to do for future when we do the research and also development. And also the number 4 is that, of course, we think the application and the transferring is very important, okay? So we look forward to the international cooperation in that case. And for the capacity building activities, we think we have to update. On the basis of the developing IMO convention, the standards, in particular the practical operations in the industry, and also very much importantly, I mean, the needs of the trainees, we so-called, the participants in each capacity building programs. Okay, so lastly, for future, I think we are looking forward to the more wider, let's say wider international cooperation, not only in Asia. So MTC Asia looks forward to making more contributions to the Asia, to other regions, under the support and guidelines of IMO. Okay, so this is the plan. For some detailed, for the detailed planned actions, we of course we have to do the conflicts, and also we are planning more activities. As I said, that we have additional activities. So we are happy to invite all of you to join us. I mean, in that case. Okay, so that's the brief report from the MTCC Asia, and I have to utilize this, take this opportunity to thank the continuous support of professional guidelines from the IMO, EU, PCU, and also the colleagues from the GMN. Thank you very much, and welcome to Shanghai, China. Thank you. Chairman?
Thank you very much, Wei, for that presentation. I'd like to move directly into our panel discussion at this point. So just a reminder that you can use your raise hand function under the reactions tab, if you have a question and would like to ask it directly to our panel. And you can also utilize the chat, as some of you have been doing, to type your questions in, and then we will raise them with the panel. So our panel of speakers, are you ready to begin?
On standby.
Okay, great. So we do have a couple questions that were raised in the chat, and I'd like to go into those while our other participants are sort of mulling over their questions. There was one quite early on asking if there's any input on the impact of the global pandemic on the program for cleaner fuels and shipping. So how has the pandemic affected you know, that program for pushing cleaner fuels and shipping?
Sarita, I think I defer to Captain to start off on this.
Yes, I think Captain Singh would be the perfect person to comment on this.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, and good afternoon again, everyone. A very relevant question, I would say, and especially what I would like to bring attention first is, even if we see international shipping today, I mean, there is virtually no low carbon fuels at present, right? But by 2050, as we discussed, there will be need of several fuel alternatives or technologies needed to put the international shipping on track with the ambitions, or let's say call it sustainable development scenarios. And these technologies are, majority of them which we spoke about, like power to fuel or other options, they are not yet commercially available. Now, bringing back the perspective of COVID, due to COVID, we can see that in the impact on emissions. So in short term, shipping activity reduced, which cut down the shipping emissions in, most likely when we don't have the exact figures now, but there will be a drop in the emissions. But along with it, we have several other factors which might hamper the shipping efforts to transition to low carbon operations and or technologies. So like first, for example, how we saw over the last year, the low oil prices, which will not only widen the price gap with low carbon fuels and discourage their adoption by ship owners, but also make it less imperative to adopt technologies and operational measures to reduce fuel consumption, right? But that being said, I personally feel that the long-term effects on maritime shipping of this COVID on long-term carbon transition is not so clear. It is unclear, because overall, I think there is a lot of positive which happened during this new usual, or what how we had to change and operate within COVID. So I mean, this also showed the strength, how the sector can continue and react to a drastic change when required. And now every week we see a new technological initiative happening towards the green transition. I mean, last week there was a Williamson launched a new Ro-Ro vessel, and every week, I mean, if you compare the activities towards decarbonization or initiatives or webinars compared to 2 years back, it's more frequent. And this COVID allows us as an opportunity now in the recovery, where stimulus packages, especially aimed at shipping industry, can provide an opportunity to accelerate the clean transition, provided that incentives are granted only to, say, for example, operations that prove that they are making efforts to scale up the adoption of low carbon technologies or fuels. So that would be my uptake. I don't see that there is a negative impact. This is temporarily what happened, but overall, I think people are moving, because as the wider industry understands the urgent need of action, and they're no more dependent only on the regulatory requirements. They're moving ahead with it.
Thank you, Captain Singh. Is there any other input from any of our other panel members this morning? If not, I'd like to go into the second question that was asked, and this is directed to Mtcc Asia. Mr. Wei Ran is replaced by Professor Zhao Feng. So Professor Feng, this would be aimed at you. Was the MSc degree capacity building program in Asia made available to personnel from the other Mtcc centers around the globe?
Okay, I'm very happy to respond to this question. We also discussed this question before. Right now, this program is mainly used to serve the personnel from Asian region. In the future, probably we will extend to personnel from the other regions. But during these years, I think we mainly serve the Asian IMO member states. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Feng. And a question that can be answered by our heads of MTCCs. Is there any plan for collaboration or collaborative work to be done on ships' emissions, pollutants, and their effects on the sustainability of the living resources of the ocean? And I'd like to also open this up to contributions from Mr. Rhodes, Joseph, you're still with us as well.
Thanks, Rita. If I may go first. The answer is yes, there are plans. And in fact, MTCC Caribbean had submitted a bid to try to further studies in terms of using the ecosystem-based approach to manage the impact of shipping on ports and the coastal areas. So there are indeed plans. The question is whether we can access the funding to do it. So we are trying, and we continue to try to get funding from various sources. And in addition to having put in an EKI bid, actually, I think it was in collaboration with the IMO in terms of the use of ecosystem-based approach to managing the marine environment, taking into consideration the impact of shipping. We also have very specific requests from across the Caribbean to assist in the monitoring of the impact of shipping on the marine environment, on territorial waters, and even in the wider maritime zones. So there are plans. The question is, whether we have the financing to go into it. So as I have been mentioning, a lot of our activities and our agendas will be heavily donor driven and also based on the financing that we receive. Having said that, with the capabilities that exist within Maritime Studies and the Marine Sciences Division, I believe that we are well equipped to undertake those studies, and we have been doing it to an extent through our masters and our doctoral students. But in terms of future project activities and big project activities encompassing the wider region, we need to continue and we need to coalesce our efforts in terms of accessing the funding to do it in a more comprehensive basis, and also to make sure that we're not replicating the work that is also being done by other agencies and regional agencies in the region.
Thank you, Vivian. Any of our other MTCC heads would like to respond as well? Or maybe at a global level, if we can have the input from IMO?
Sure, Sarita, thanks very much. The point I'd like to emphasize is that, the global MTCC network is a network. They are connected, and independently from the project, the network has set up their own terms of reference, and they've set out a kind of framework by which they will work together, contribute to each other's work. And there's lots of examples where that collaboration, coordination is happening already. This event is just one example where MTCCs are contributing to other MTCCs' work, and beyond the capacity building, this is also this also relates to pilot project work, sharing ideas, sharing initiatives. So that's what's happening now. When we look ahead to the future, Vivian made probably what's the most important point is, how much the MTCCs can collaborate and coordinate is going to be based on the issue of funding. And, there's different scenarios that might play out. One of the scenarios is that different regions have different priorities based on the expectations of the donor. So in one region, they might focus on shipping emissions as the key priority, and in another region, they might focus on port emissions as a priority. So, there's different scenarios which will dictate how much global coordination there can be between the centres. We certainly hope that the centres will be able to work on the same topics and mutually support each other and help with the dissemination of best practice and all these different areas. But there are many factors like donor funding which will influence this quite significantly.
Thank you, Anton. And I take that point well made by both you and Vivian, that there's the expertise there, there's the network there, and that it's a bit limited in terms of the donor funding. I see Vivian would like to add something in at this point as well.
Thanks, Rita. So dovetailing from Anton's point, the issue with donor funding as well, and as he highlighted, it will be based on the priorities of the donors. But one of the things we also have to bear in mind, what influences the priorities of the donor and the donors is what is written in our national policy narratives. So this is where we have to continue to progress the agenda and make sure our priorities are within the government policy documents, within the national action plans, within the NDCs, within the blue growth strategies. Because with that, it will be easier to attract the donor funding, to justify the donor funding, and to be able to, channel the donor funding through those narratives in the national policy and national strategies. So just a call out that we need to continue lobbying and doing our part to making sure that our priorities are well represented in the national action plans and strategies.
Thank you, Vivian, for that input. And I know Lydia wanted to add something in at this point as well. I know Lydia also has a lot of experience with the policy aspects. I'm not sure if that's the area she'd like to contribute to, but Lydia, go ahead.
Thank you, Sarita. I missed you the first time. I wanted to make the comment on this. And initially you had asked whether MTCCs are working towards mitigating the marine environment in line with the shipping aspects. MTCC Africa is putting this into consideration, similar to what Vivian has mentioned with the coastal erosion at the ports. We have been in discussions with a UN agency known as the Nairobi Convention. We are looking as to how we can make this progressive, because they are also trying to see how it will work in the aspect of marine spatial planning, which is still a very gray area in the jurisdiction that we are in. And we feel that as MTCC Africa, we can bring a lot to the table to ensure that there's a level playing field for all to represent this. And this ties closely to the marine litter aspect, which is also tied to the ecosystems. And MTCC Africa is also in talks with the regional organizations that deal in marine research. The question is whether we will have enough time to carry out all the projects to completion and fruition, considering we have others that we are working at and looking into ensuring we finish. Thank you.
Thanks, Lydia. So we see that there are, definitely plans and discussions on the table about these initiatives to address the effects on the living resources. Captain Singh, you wanted to make a contribution?
Thank you, Sarita. I just wanted to say in reference to a question by Professor or Dr. Potts here, in reference to when we are looking at the collaboration, I think it is also important to highlight. I mean, as at a macro level, at global level, IMO, I think, is going to celebrate the first anniversary of Department of Partnerships and Projects. So I think that is a very important development when we are looking at overarching and not looking at only emission externalities, because certainly the formation of that within IMO has provided a platform. So like for a common man, if I look at a ship, so how ship is impacting, what are the negative externalities from ship to the environment? So emissions, hull, anti-fouling, garbage, so everything, the plastic pollution, so things. So it means that that department itself, I'm sure we must invite Dr. Jose to speak a little bit on that. But certainly that development, I think is filling that gap where the forces are now joined together. So you're targeting all aspects of ship externalities or maritime sector's negative externalities. So yes, the action is on, in my opinion, that would I say. But we must listen from Dr. Jose as he's going to, it'll be their first anniversary very soon for that department.
Thank you, Suchit. There are a number of questions on the chat, so I'm just going to roll straight into the next question. If a specific company is seeking technical support for their individual technical assistance, is such support
So you muted.
Oh, sorry. I'm not sure at which point I became muted again. So I'm just going to roll straight into the next question on the chat. If a specific company is seeking technical support for their individual technical assistance, is such support available through the Mtcc Caribbean or the GMN?
So if I may, I mean, I can speak on behalf of Mtcc Caribbean. Yes, we will most likely welcome that, and I believe that is one of the important aspect, I would say, of our presence. We have been building the capacity, and we will look for an opportunity where we will be able to assist any private company or a shipping operator to how we can provide the required technical support. So please, you're welcome in share your, or we can arrange meetings later on and then discuss this. But yes, this is an aspect which we continuously look into.
Thanks, Sukhjit. I see Joseph would also like to contribute here.
Yes.
Thank you, Sadida. Sorry, this was because Captain Singh mentioned my name before. I thought I would just come back. If you allow me, it was a good question. The interactions between these various sectors, stakeholders, as we all know, these are not, these emissions or pollutions, or they don't stand alone. They do interact, they do have an impact, atmospheric impact, climate change impact at the same time with the oceans. Ocean acidification is a clear connection between emissions and living marine resources. So at the policy level in IMO, we do handle these things from a regulatory purpose in a separate way. However, the holistic approach is there that, yes, we need to address all this in one go, and as much as possible, encourage collaboration and participation, across these issues. If you look into some of the GEF programs, which are the large marine ecosystem programs, that I'm sure Caribbean is also benefiting, and many other regions, the first thing they do is a transboundary diagnostic analysis, and then coming up with the strategic priorities to address. This kind of ensure that there are connectivities between all these issues. But surprisingly, some of the shipping related issues do not come to the surface in this transboundary diagnostic analysis. I wonder why, but in many cases, you would probably not find many of these issues surfacing. So there could be a little bit of an issue that the active players are not really engaged in making this connection. Sometimes it could be that then just one ministry leading this in these kind of discussions. Maybe it's only Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Transport may not be engaged in, or vice versa. So, there are still challenges in getting that harmony and the collaboration happening at the national and regional levels. But we do hope this will improve and there will be collaboration, because that is very much needed. I don't think we can separate SDG 14 and 13 for say, and say that these are two different things. So we would like to see projects collaborating on these different issues. One of the advantage of having this MTCs in the university level in many of these places is exactly that. Maybe there are opportunities to connect at that level, even because many of the universities get engaged into, as Lydia said, marine research, marine spatial planning, all that. So there are opportunities out there. But the policy level, the national level and regional level, I think we should encourage these various interministerial meetings to happen, and not just one ministry is engaged in. And I'm seeing improvements in many places, in many countries, where national interministerial task forces are established, and we can see the collaboration increasing, but it's still a way to go. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks, Jose. And again, that brings home the point that we need that cooperation at the individual national levels first, and that inclusion and in the priorities and the policies in order to encourage and to feed into that collaboration. as well. Also on the topic is our next question, again on collaboration. Are there plans for collaboration with Mtcc, IMO, and other relevant institutions already on the way for implementing the EEDI through the Ship Energy Efficiency Management Plan within the Caribbean region?
If I take, okay. Thank you, Sarita. The question, I mean, I'm a little confused about the question, but so, I mean, EEDI and SIMP is already implemented, I would say, since 2013, EEDI for new ships. However, going forward, I mean, the last year, November, there is already EEXI now for existing ships, and which most likely in March will be again in action along with carbon intensity CI requirements. So, however, if we look at the collaboration, yes, we are as MTCC, Caribbean, we are building capacity within the region where now our maritime administration of the region are already, I mean, they're aware of how they can use these regulatory requirements within MARPOL Annex 6 to say counteract the emissions from fleets registered to their flags or the vessels which are visiting their ports. So yes, I mean the collaboration is on, and our ongoing online training on maritime energy management on board ships is part of that same activity.
Thanks, Sukhjit, for that. I hope that answered the question from our participant, and if that was the direction that you were going in. You can feel free to ask a follow-up question if there's anything additional that you want to know. I'm also seeing in terms of the funding and accessing funding. Sorry, Vivian, you wanted to add something before we moved on?
No, sorry. I was just looking at the other question.
Right. So I think this pretty much talks to the availability of donor funding and our ability to access the donor funding. This question asks, would there be a unified database by which successful recruitment of donors can be shared with each other to ensure we all develop a library of case files that we can all learn from and develop together? This is a very interesting question. Vivian?
Yes, so having such a database has been recommended before, and is something that we try to encourage, and is certainly one of the learning that you see in terms of governance strategies being recommended, is greater data sharing amongst countries, amongst regions, so that they don't duplicate the allocation of resources. What I have also observed is that the donors tend to track these things and have a better database than the regions themselves, because they themselves are tracking where they are allocating funding. And in our capacity building report, we actually have a listing. We attempted to create a listing of all the projects that have been funded with respect to climate action in the region. So that's something that you can probably use as a point of reference. CARICOM would usually be the best host for such a database. And again, when we were progressing our agendas in terms of information sharing and data dissemination, this will also be something that we would like to create, because we recognize the importance of it, the importance of best use of resources that is allocated to the region. So it's a very good suggestion. We can try to create and become a clearinghouse for such information, but it is highly dependent on the individual countries, their ministries of planning, their ministries of public administrations, willingness to share information with us in terms of projects.
Thank you, Vivian. I'm not seeing any raised hands or any further questions in the chat at this point. So what I would like to do is to encourage our participants, if they have further questions beyond the end of today's session, to reach out to us via the website, via email, or to, you know, approach our presenters one-on-one later on. I'd ask the speakers if they would like to leave us with any final thoughts, any key ideas that are central to their presentations that they would like to leave us with.
Go ahead.
From my side, Sarita, it's just a thank you for the opportunity to present, and it's great to see, you know, all of us centres engaging in the same forum. This is the first of the regional conferences, so Caribbean is really leading the way, and obviously setting a very high bar for the other MTCCs. But for participants that might be interested and have an interest in other regions, this type of event is being replicated in March. So you might be interested to visit the Africa Regional Conference, the Asia Regional Conference, Pacific, so forth. You can find details on all these events at the GMN website. So I just want to thank Caribbean for kicking off, which is going to, you know, what's going to be a great activity. And yeah, setting a great benchmark for the other events which are upcoming in March. So thank you very much.
You're welcome, Anton. And thank you for always being willing to present for us.
Okay, so I should probably go last, but but you know, I'd like to thank everyone. I see we're losing participants because people are probably hungry. But in terms of our next steps, I really think that we have to continue the collaboration, and in the coming 3 days, we will continue to progress that conversation as how do we improve our collaborative efforts.
Thanks, Vivian. Any other presenters, or can we go straight into the conclusion by Vivian and Captain Singh?
From MTCC Africa, I just want to say a big congratulations for the pace that you're setting for us. And I can imagine the work that it has gone into this. Definitely a good job. We look forward to working together in future. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thanks, Lydia. Thank you very much. And I see Jose has his hand up as well.
Yeah, I will be very brief. I won't be here for tomorrow and day after. I will miss it. But thank you very much, MTC Caribbean, for kicking off this show, and very proud of your achievements. The only thing I want to remind the participants and partners here is, as Captain Singh mentioned, the IMO's new department, which I represent, the new Department of Partnerships and Projects, was established last year. And it is the first birthday, the next Monday. We have a little celebration, but more than celebration, we want to let you know that we are looking into increasing our partnership portfolio, not just environmental issues, but also safety, security, maritime single windows, maritime digitalization. So, you know, if we could be of any help in assisting countries and developing partnerships with the donors, we are open for discussions, and we are there to support the countries in those areas. So I just want to leave there, but thank you, Vivian and team, for a fantastic kickoff of this conference, and also PCU for supporting it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jose, and thanks for that insight into the developments on partnerships. Vivian, Captain Singh, I'd hand over to you at this point for our day one conclusion.
Okay. So just to wrap up today in terms of what we have covered so far. So in terms of the next steps, in terms of MTCC, as I indicated, it's really in terms of pursuing our climate financing, aligning our regional agendas, and continuing to support the work of the IMO in the region. Our continuing progress of several presenters have indicated is likely to be heavily donor driven, but we will continue to forge and progress the institutionalizing of that relationship with CARICOM so that we can progress a maritime climate action agenda through that regional community. And Sujit, I just borrowed in terms of your slide here, feel free to jump in. Your points in terms of the national action plans, they are all very well made and very important. Please, if you want to take over in terms of further elaborating on this slide.
Thank you, Vivian. We spoke about them. So all I would say is we need to focus as a region, and this is critical time. We're already into the critical time, and for surely we cannot continue business as usual. If you look at the normal lifespan of a vessel, which is 20 to 25 years, and given we are in 2021 with average age of vessels operating in the region at 11, so it means we have a considerable amount of fleet which is already requiring some sort of technological innovation which can be retrofitted, and surely the new orders will take that into consideration. So if there is any interruption because of this technological update, so we have to be careful about that also, because there will be impact on the existing fleet, and given our dependence on trade, especially imports as small island developing states, we need an urgent action. So technology and solutions exist. We need to focus and narrow down what will benefit us, right? Or what can be implemented where we can have the most impact within the region. And most importantly, need to keep that in our priorities. Within, it's not only where we where there is a phrase where we say trying to convert the converted, right? We all understand this, but we need to convey this into the wider economy. The people who benefit from the sector need to understand the importance of this. So we can go to the next slide from here. Yeah.
Thank you. So in terms of the next steps, we continue working under the umbrella of the IMO. That is our immediate future based on the non-cost extension mentioned by Anton. We are working towards combining forces across regions within the GMN. And while each of the MTCCs have been busy in progressing their own agendas and trying to work towards delivering under the constraints of a pandemic, we will renew our commitment towards trying to forge and work together and support each other as far as possible. We as MTCC will continue as well to reach out to the various MTCCs in progressing the decarbonization agenda. We will continue our capacity building efforts as we've identified in terms of creating the enabling environment. And as Sujit has flagged, there is need for urgent action. And he's also flagged that it's not only about ships. In our previous presentations, our webinars, our capacity building initiatives, our maritime energy management training modules, we have made sure to emphasize that the efficiencies that shipping would bring and the reductions in shipping emissions can easily come to zero or count for nothing really if the port infrastructure is not able to adequately support the shipping and the emerging and adoption of new technologies in shipping. So on the port side and in the hinterland side, we have to look at greening logistics across the supply chain. We've also, across all our capacity building initiatives, emphasized the need for national action plans in terms of including the requirements of domestic ambitions for domestic shipping. So the inclusion of maritime shipping in domestic emissions continues to be something that is not adequately represented across NDCs. So we need to continue to progress our dialogue, especially as we're talking about future funding and donor funding that will be driven by these agendas. And we also need to ensure that whatever we're doing is going to tap into and synergize with Blue Growth initiatives. So that's really our wrap up in terms of our session today, and also leads into our day 2 of the Convex and day 3 of the Convex. So we'll be looking tomorrow at facilitating blue growth and navigating to net zero. And then the third day, we'll be looking at the current state of implementation. No, sorry, this is all day 2. Day 3, we're looking at the technologies and the adoption and implementation of technologies. So be sure to join us for 3 sessions tomorrow, navigating to net zero, facilitating blue growth, and current state of implementation of MARPOL Annex 6. So thank you, and I hand over to Sarita or Captain if you would like to include anything.
Thank you, Vivian. I think you have captured everything, and I just say thank you to everyone, and especially those across the time zones, and hopefully see you tomorrow. We have some interesting facts coming out tomorrow in these sessions 4, 5, and 6. Thank you again, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Vivian and Suchit. Just a reminder that our sessions begin at 9:30 a.m. Atlantic Standard Time tomorrow. And yes, to encourage you and welcome you back to join us tomorrow. I see a lot of you did turn on your cameras to my request on the chat. So I'm just gonna ask those who may not have seen on the chat, can you please turn on your cameras at this point so we can get a very lovely day 1 of the conference photo. And Michael and Tevin, can you indicate to us when you have gotten your photos?
Tevin?
We're good.
No, I think they need to change the view. It's in the speaker view. I was just waiting to take a picture, but I am not seeing the participants.
Tev?
Okay, we got 2 so far.
Okay.
Okay, so
Okay.
we're good.
We're good.
Thanks,
Thank you, everyone.
Don't forget, everyone, before you all leave, this is a 2-part conference exhibition. So while we have the conference here, we also have our exhibitors on our dedicated Mtcc webpage, where you can also engage with our exhibitors. For example, Port Exchange there. If you want to set up any meeting with them or learn about their technology, you can go to their dedicated landing page on the Mtcc webpage. So that's it from me.
Thank you for the highlight, Mike.
Okay. Bye, everyone. See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye. Bye-bye.